Been involved with trying to build flying saucers. You usually found that flying saucers, if you look at most of the movies, there's always seems to be a robot involved with it. Very highly defendable. And that was very important because of my belief and the belief of many other people that I have great respect for, that the world is going through I'll call it a meltdown. Once the people found out what had been done to them by their representatives, they felt that it would be much better for their health and safety to be somewhere else. My understanding, it was the third ever closed session of Congress. We found that no matter where the politician was and what committee he was on, when top secret things were talked about, they wanted to close the session early so they could get out and put their tips out to the news. So we don't have any confidentiality in that, so it leaked out, I'm sure.
Am I right in assuming that you wouldn't contradict those leaks?
I wouldn't contradict them at all.
Thank you. This is Bill Ryan and Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot, and this is Monday, June the 29th. And this is a Project Camelot interview with a difference, because not only have I flown the best part of 8,000 miles, at least it feels like it, if it's not quite that many, from Europe to be here for the weekend, but we are also here with David Wilcock, who's also flown to Los Angeles here for the weekend to join us in a meeting that we had with Dr. Pete Peterson, who's a name that not many people will know, but maybe among the many extraordinary whistleblowers and contacts and researchers and scientists who we have had the great pleasure of talking to, maybe one of the most important. And yesterday we were talking off record for the best part of 12 hours, and our minds are still digesting an enormous amount of extraordinary information that he shared with us, some of which is off record, and as much as possible, Pete is willing to put on record here, on camera, because you feel, don't you, Pete, that there is profound and important reason why the sort of people who will be watching this video need to hear what it is that you have to say. I want to salute you because you're a very brave man. And one of the things we want to ask you, straight off the cuff, is why is it that you feel that you wanted to put some of your almost unbelievable and very important testimony on camera for a lot of people to listen to and watch and understand at this time? Why is it that you've come forward and you're talking to us now?
Well, I think the main reason for that is that I've had a inside insight for many, many years, having been picked up in various programs to do things for the government since I was 13 years old. And being a problem solver, I wish I could say that it was hard work and so forth, but I come from a long line of inventors on both sides of my family tree, and people who graduated from school very early, and were significant in affecting things that affected humanity, a number of them in virtually every kind of field and climate. And I see that the world seems to have gone downhill. I'm aware of many programs to remove intelligence from people and return the people, at least of this nation, to a mediocre status. We've watched the school systems deteriorate. We've watched the, as my wife likes to say, the program in the school systems, No Child Left with a Mind. And that's her paraphrase for it. And I've seen that the type of government we have, though I'm a patriot and very crudely use the phrase that I got the flag tattooed on both cheeks of my fanny the hard way. I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps, and a great part of that was in combat and combat zones and other things I did for the government, and like to think I am unique in that I was probably shot at on most continents. And anyway, what I see happening is a complete turn away from the way this country started out and then its constitution to what appears to be headed toward a socialistic system where reason and logic has no bearing. And it concerns me, and I have no idea if my voice can help. I have no idea if that can, but I know that my ideas, I have inventions that have proven to be very helpful to society, and many of them have been suppressed by the fact that we had a government that was run by industry rather than by the people. And it's turned away from that, and many industries are actually governed by rules and regulations that make it virtually impossible for them to exist if they do things that are good for humanity. Mm-hmm. For example, we've had numerous things that happened in the industry of alternative power that were very inexpensive, very capable, but what we do is we've, through their own legislation, limited the power companies to being able to charge a certain amount over and above their costs. So when their costs went down, their profit went down, and they couldn't economically operate.
What I would love to ask you about, Pete, before we go into some of the stories that you have to tell, and we have good reason to believe that, having spent the best part of 12 hours yesterday talking about a tiny fraction of your experience, I think that we could probably talk literally for days. And what the people watching this video are really concerned about, I think, is what can you help them understand better than they do at the moment about what's really happening on this planet at the moment? What are the agendas of the controllers? How much trouble are we in, and what can people do? And I want to put that question on hold because this is the purpose of this video as far as we're concerned. And there's a whole separate topic, which is a technological topic, because this man we're talking to now has told us about technology that we didn't know existed. And my brain is still reeling over a conversation that we had at breakfast this morning, about which I'm going to say nothing. Now, before we start all of that, and that was a wonderful overview that you gave about your intentions, can you give us a little bit of a timeline of your career history, which started when you were very young? A little bit about the kind of things you've been involved in. We're not asking you to name names, but we just want to present you as somebody who people can get some kind of an idea of who this person is that we're talking to, whose name they haven't heard before.
Well, I can do that. Very interesting thing we were talking about. I have no idea where these thoughts came to me, but I know that very early on in life, I was so different from the people around me that I thought that probably I fell from the sky in a titanium egg and landed in my grandfather's orchard, and my parents found me there.
And I think you're probably right, actually, having talked to you for 2 days.
And until I was about 22, I actually believed that.
He is real. He's solid.
He's real, huh?
Then I quit believing that when I was in my mid-20s, and in my last few years, I'm nearly 70, and in my last few years I've started believing that again. Because I find that the people I'm stuck with here on this little spaceship Earth don't seem to have the same
view
of anything. And it may be that I'm just wacky, but my wackiness has made a lot of products and made a lot of sense to a number of people throughout my life. when, for some reason, probably genetics, because I have on both of my parents' sides, I have long lines of geniuses that extend back in history. And I grew up in a home that was entirely powered and heated and cooled in a very temperate climate, was powered by the sun and by atmospheric pressure change. It was a home that had a gallery inside of it, much like Mexican haciendas, but was covered, where we grew all of our meat products in the form of chickens and rabbits and such, and where we grew all of our food products.
So you had an interesting and unusual upbringing.
Had an interesting and unusual upbringing, and we drove in cars that my father made and invented, and we lived in homes that my father built out of strange materials that were very highly insulated. My dad was a pioneer in tilt-up concrete buildings, and was an engineer for the military when in my youth through Second World War.
And you were handpicked and chosen for a special program when you were as young as 13. Is this
Yes,
right?
I distinguished myself at age 10 by building a number of rockets that held altitude records, world altitude records, and by inventing a material that's used even today to power solid fuel rockets. That material got out of my hands because I'm not a businessman and wasn't a businessman, and freely gave it away, and other people capitalized on it. But I liked explosions, and so early on started building rockets.
There's a wonderful story that you told us yesterday that we'd love to say again very briefly, and I'm going to be using the word briefly in my questions here with an apology, because we know that you could talk with us literally for days about the extraordinary experiences you have, the things that you know, the things that you've been told, the things that you strongly believe with good reason. But one of the stories that we want you to tell is what happened one day when you were 10 years old with a bunch of adults and you had an extraordinary experience.
Well, I'll preface that just a little bit with the fact that as I was growing up, it was in a very small town, small country town, about 3 blocks long, and not a lot of people. My parents had a home that had a formal garden, and many of the local people would borrow that for weddings and family reunions and things like that, which my parents gladly lent them the facilities. And there was a wedding that went on, and as I remember, it was kind of in maybe June or July of 1950. And at that point, I had very limited educational resources in this tiny town, but one of the books that got me very, very interested in ancient peoples and anthropology and archaeology was the book that was written about the discovery of King Tut's tomb. And about the time I finished that book, it got me very, very excited to learn about the Egyptians and learn about the technologies that they had and who they were and how they built the pyramids. A lecturer came to town, the man who wrote the book Kon-Tiki, Thor Heyerdahl, and then that got me excited, so I decided I wanted to be an anthropologist archaeologist, and was dead set on it and reading everything I could get through the state library system on that subject. And along came this wedding, and just about as the preacher was to say the words of destruction to the bride and groom, someone pointed up the sky and said, "What's that?" And everyone turned around. There were about 130 people there, and everyone turned around and looked, and for the next 2 hours, everyone at the wedding watched a series and groups of what I can only call flying saucers, flying through the air, some as close as maybe 100 feet and some as far away as maybe 20 miles, put on a spectacular show, and everyone there saw it, as did many people in the surrounding community.
Were they all the same?
No, there were very different ones. Some were the shape of a pencil and seemed to have windows along the periphery. Some were round like a ball. Some were saucer shaped with a bubble or a dome on top. Some saucer shaped with 2 or 3 bubbles on the bottom. If you go back and look through the various flying saucer sightings that we've heard about over the years, there was probably 1 or 2 of everything we've ever heard about. And these things would dash away, clear out of sight, and come back. They would run away from the people at the wedding party directly, so you were looking just at one spot.
And the significance of this is that at this point you made a major life change, right?
At this point I made a major life change. I decided I was much less interested in King Tut than I was in having my own flying saucer.
Right.
And so immediately started studying science. And so I've studied science ever since, and much of it toward the end of building my own flying saucer. And over the years I came to the conclusion that it was, to build a flying saucer, you really needed to know first how to build what I call a Doctor Who phone booth. And for those who don't know, Doctor Who is a British science fiction spoof that runs on many stations in America about 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. and there have been something like 6 or 7 different Doctor Who's over the years. It's run so long. And Doctor Who had a red British phone booth.
He didn't have a red British phone booth, he had a black police phone box. It was a police phone box.
Ah, okay.
It wasn't a red one.
All right, but he had a 2-holer British phone booth, and he would go into it and it would become a time machine.
It was called the TARDIS.
It was called the TARDIS, and so he was a Time Lord, and he would travel back and forth in both space and time. And so as I tried to figure out how to build a flying saucer, I found out it was easier to build a TARDIS. And then I got thinking, well, who wants to just shove an aerodynamic body through air when you can just simply get somewhere and dial your destination and walk out where you are, and you don't have to push anything through the air. So anyway, I worked toward that end and have done many, many science projects, some for large corporations, some for, we'll call them agencies, and many of them for myself. And I'm in the process now at age 69 of building a laboratory to complete the work that I've done, and having acquired a number of very special pieces of equipment for researching such things. And so that's what I'm about right now, and I'm in the process of building that laboratory in a remote location where there are very little man-made magnetic fields. We don't really get television or radio direct much here, and have very, very little man-made interference, electromagnetic interference, and it allows me to do my work that I need to do. And so that's the life change that happened when I was 10 years old, and so I've been on that pursuit ever since.
And we would say, be careful what you wish for, because now you have the understanding, as far as you have told us in our conversation so far, you have actually the understanding, if you don't have the factory, to actually be able to make these machines. And you can also confirm that the powers that be on planet Earth actually have access to this technology and use it for all kinds of reasons. Is this correct?
As far as I can tell, there are a number of governments that have this technology. My feeling is, and or my knowledge is, that it's been acquired from people who came to this planet from off-planet. And it's been from the reading of a lot of ancient documents dating back as far as 6,000 years.
To the Sumerians?
To the Sumerians. I have a Sumerian document that's been translated that tells exactly how to build a flying saucer. And it's a direct translation. And It probably doesn't give everything, but it certainly gives the principles. And I've experimented with a number of those principles and find out that things take place that in modern physics aren't possible. And I've worked with a group of scientists that have recently discovered things in both mathematics and science that would lead me to believe that the greater part of science that we have today, and I have a PhD degree in natural philosophy, which they used to call physics, that took a lot of effort to acquire, and it leads me to believe that these ancient documents portray knowledge that we simply don't have, and that the knowledge we do have is wrong.
And you've been privileged to spend time in the Vatican Library. Is this something you can talk about on record?
Probably, well, I can talk about things that there's a lot of information there that is very contrary to things that we believe very deeply, both philosophically and scientifically. And that's basically been held away from the public. It's not common knowledge. A lot of translations, which I think probably came from the remnants of what didn't burn in the Great Library of Alexandria. Some very ancient documents, and I was involved at a time with machine language translation of a lot of that material, which was, in those days, was somewhat crude, but at least it gave us some ideas. And the ones that looked good were later translated by people who had done, lifetime studies of the language, and I think they're pretty fair translations.
Are you able to say about anything that you learned about the Anunnaki? Or is this off record as well?
The Anunnaki, who are written about in the Christian and Jewish Bible texts, I've seen skeletons of what we call giants. There have been recent giants. There are people that would travel around with traveling circuses and so forth that were very, very large through genetic problems that they had, genetic errors, and all of them had joint problems. They had organ problems. They died young. The bodies couldn't support the weight, things like that. But some of the skeletons don't show those anomalies that one would see, and they're very well formed. They're very much like our skeletons in many respects, and they were written about in the Bible, and they were written about in other ancient texts. So one has to believe. I know that there were numerous suggestions that DNA tests be run on them once we got DNA testing pretty well down, and I know those have been thwarted by various religions and various school bodies, people not wanting to say that there are things that we don't understand, or that they don't understand, or that they don't want to understand.
But we human beings are from ET lineage, are we not?
My belief is that, I'll give you an example. Radiocarbon dating has become very, very accurate. And we have very good records of cavemen that didn't have a language. They drew some drew pictures, some didn't. We found caves with their tools in them, with the evidences of their civilization, with their making crude tools and things. And there have been a number of spots that those were found, especially in Africa and Europe and the Middle East. And then all of a sudden, over an 80-year period, emerged a civilization that for 3,000 years had the same language and the same religion and the same writing and the same mathematics. And was very, very advanced from things that came afterwards. And, in modern history, since, let's say 300 BC, we haven't had any civilization that didn't change the language to where you couldn't read it in the 300-year period.
Yeah. Now, many of the viewers of this video will be aware of the influence on ancient Sumeria, where this fully developed civilization seemed to appear from nowhere. I was just asking whether you can confirm in any way what a lot of people suspect, which is that we actually have been created or engineered by ETs who knew what they were doing and who wanted to create us for special purposes.
Well, I don't have absolute proof of that. That's one reason I'm building the laboratory here. But one of the things I did notice in the late 70s and early 80s, I did a lot of medical equipment engineering, and I designed a machine that would read a field that surrounded the human body and could give you a readout on the condition of the organs, organ by organ in the body, and then it could locate or find or even create a medication that would fix it. And one of the things that I found was in the early beginning that machine could pretty accurately come up with diagnosis rate of 50%. And of course I wanted it to be perfect, and spent a number of years finding out that the reason that I didn't get over 50% was because a lot of people had genetic errors in their genetic system, and as a result of that they had disease processes that were based on those genetic errors. So you had to treat them very differently as people that had a disease that was based on viri or germs or other parasites especially. And so I finally got it to where about 70 to 75% of the diagnoses appeared correct, and the selection of medication treatment appeared correct. And then I thought, well, okay, there's 15% here that I really don't understand. And it was about 10 or 15 years later that we got pretty familiar with and pretty good with genetic testing. And I found that 15% of people had very, very similar sequences in the DNA that were unlike the other 85% of the people, and they were unlike anything else on Earth. They appeared to be alien to the Earth. And so I thought, well, that could be through exposure to some form of solar radiation or some type of ionizing radiation. And so we looked at people that lived in areas that had natural radioactive compounds, like the areas in southern Utah where a lot of the carnotite and other uranium-bearing ores were mined, and people that spent time there, people that were in fallout zones of nuclear testing at the Nuclear Test Center in Nevada. We sent the Gemini capsule up, and it went up, and well, the first capsule that went up, and so we're all sitting in mission control and called up, and ground to capsule, hello, do you read us? Comes back, and there was dead silence, and then everybody laughed because we had the thing, the last guy that went to work had to be the guy that ran for lunch, and right down the street from JPL, right above the Rose Bowl, was like one of the first Jack-in-the-Boxes. And you'd drive in and you'd order, and then they'd repeat the order back and then come back, and you couldn't hear a word. And so everybody realized that these astronauts had taken their turn going and getting lunch, and et cetera, and everybody laughed and thought they were simulating the Jack-in-the-Box effect. It turns out that that's the best communication we had. And so immediately Chris Kraft turns to me and says, Peterson, solve this problem. So I made a thing that we eventually called the lecture laundry, and it was a device that found out why such things took place, and they still take place. We still go to drive-ins and you can't understand a darn thing. But I built some no noise microphones, but also had a device that removed all of that problem. And we found out there are 3 narrow passbands where all the information of speech is recorded. 2 of them record the information. 1 of them gives you the identification of the speaker. But that 1 passband that gives you the speaker identification has to have a variable frequency start up and drop off. And so you have a little knob on it, so you turn it on in a lecture and you turn this knob until you can hear the speaker very, very clearly, and you can hear him perfectly. And you don't hear the airplanes go over, the police cars go by, people shuffling their papers, the noise from the cooling fan, the noise from the rear projection fan, etc., etc., etc. So anyway, one of the little things out of my life. But I used to build those, and when I moved to build my new laboratory 9 years ago, I quit building those. So that's one of the products I intend to put back in production. I checked to see why I couldn't get the final 15% of the diagnostic readings correct, and finally came to the conclusion that it was because these people had DNA that was had come from off planet, and that led me to think, well, if that's the case, there must be some kind of historical record. And when I went back and looked at the historical record, I found out that there are numerous records and numerous archaeological evidence that we were visited by people from off planet. And very probably, in my opinion, not only off planet, but extraterrestrial or extra solar system type of visitors. And you know, there's so many different people that claim having seen such things, that they existed, seen such peoples. There are several broad categories of such aliens. A small percentage of those could be attributed to anything from paranoia to just tall tales or whatever. But when you have as many as there are, all the way down through all of recorded history, leads one to believe that it probably was very, very true that such things existed. And as an example, anyone who wants to find something from the past, read Ezekiel in the Bible.
Yeah. In the course of your work, have you encountered any documentation about the existence of our relationship with creatures like this?
I have. Most of them I can't talk about.
Sure.
But yes, I've seen things written by scientists that I have very high respect for. Some were teachers of mine. Some were people that I worked with scientifically in other fields. And there were casual conversations about such things. And that's why I have the beliefs that I have, that that we have extraterrestrial DNA in our bodies, and some of us do. It's rather interesting to note that there's been a lot of supposition about various programs to reprogram people's minds, to throw their thinking off, to cause them to believe things that aren't necessarily true, but politically would be a very good thing for those in politics and in government and in religion. And it's interesting to note that mind control techniques work on 85% of the people. And the 15% that they don't work well on are people that have that particular DNA string.
Okay.
So another, you know, just another verification that those people are very different from the average person.
Pete, I'm sure we're going to have tons of people wanting to know, of this 15% DNA category, is it all one type of person, like one race, or are they distributed throughout the population? And if you can't tell us, you can't tell us.
No, they obviously run in family trees. along family tree lines or family lines, but they're pretty well distributed throughout all different cultures and races.
Thank you. I thought that was the case.
And which again would be, to me, a confirmation that they probably did happen, because why would someone come and select just one race or one family line?
So this is black and white and
Right.
red and Amerindian
Red and yellow
everything.
and
Okay.
green and blue and whatever.
Yep.
How about your DNA? Are you one of those?
Far as I know, I am.
We probably all are in this room.
And we probably all are in this room, as a matter of fact. I've found that as the last 10 or 12 years have progressed, I've noticed that many people, when I talk to about things that I know that are a fact in both science, mathematics, and in history, as well as in my belief system, I talk to certain people, and the 85% that I don't seem to have a medical problem with, i.e. the ones that have quote-unquote normal human DNA.
I don't seem to understand what you're talking about.
When I talk to them, it used to be that they would call me crazy, or it used to be that they'd be more really interested and want to learn about it. But nowadays, when you talk to those people, when you're done talking, they don't say, "That's crazy, you're crazy, I don't believe it." They come back into consciousness and start talking like you'd never said a word.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
interesting. And so the people watching this video are probably among the 15%. They're self-selective in many areas. is
Well,
what we find.
from what you've told me about the people that you deal with, I would believe that. They're probably in that 15%.
Okay. Now, there's so many places we can go from this conversation, but there's something important which I want to grab here and now, and that is, you made an allusion a few minutes ago to when you moved here 9 years ago to be in a very quiet, secluded place with your laboratory, which you're building to do your work. And what can you say about why you are here and why people who are elsewhere might one day wish that they were also here?
Well, that's something that in our talks of the last day or so we haven't really gotten into, but I'm in an area that had two requirements for me and for some of the people who I do various things for that are not to be named, but one of them is this area is very secluded from man-made electromagnetic radiation. It's a deep valley with high mountains surrounding it in 360 degrees. The entrance to it is through a very narrow, long, winding canyon. So we don't really get radio here or television directly, and the power that comes in here does have interference on it, as well as it has information on it. But it's very, very secluded informationally, and then the place that I chose here is kind of back in a little notch in the mountains, and so it's even more secluded. So that was one reason. The other reason is it's an area that's very highly defendable. And that was very important because of my belief and the belief of many other people that I have great respect for, that the world is going through I'll call it a meltdown. We're going through a change. The alternative thought, radio and television shows and motion pictures are all, and books and movies are all fraught with the fact that something major is going to happen in 2010 or 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar. Earth changes, a number of things. The Yellowstone caldera is very, very active. There are areas up there where the ground has risen. My understanding is it's risen about 4 feet. We all know that there's got to be major volcanic activity under Yellowstone area because we can go up there and see the mud pots bubbling and Old Faithful geysering, and
you get the same
smell
thing.
the sulfur coming out of Hades.
And metaphorically, the same thing may be happening politically.
Exactly, and the same thing happening politically. We've best I can tell, we've been printing not only billions but trillions of dollars with nothing to back them whatsoever. And right now I have very dear friends in China that are offering me mature T-bills and mature U.S. bonds that they can't seem to get cashed, and that they're offering for 10 cents on the dollar. And they're trillions of dollars worth. It'd be enough that if the world court system would enforce their eventual payment, every man, woman, and child in the United States would have to work for 4 or 5 generations to pay them off.
And what's the connection between that and your being here?
Well, that my being here is I'm in an area that, because of its geographical location, has 4 seasons, but it has a good growing season. The area where I am exports both agricultural and meat product in far greater amounts than the people here would consume. 1 pry bar or 1 stick of dynamite would shut access and not egress particularly, but it certainly would shut access off, so that if there were indeed a failure of the currency and the ensuing political and certainly geopolitical meltdown, this area would be very protected from large groups of people with no money and therefore no food and no energy, and whatever people come looking for food would probably come to an area like this.
Is there anything you can say about your belief of the likelihood of these events transpiring?
I've been led to believe in numerous briefings, and people that I know in fields that very definitely would know and so forth, they've all warned me that I should be at a place like this, and many people, even those from Europe and other places that had very heavy financial connections in major cities around the world, have closed those offices down, and a great number of them have expressed a desire to move here if they haven't already moved here.
When you mean here to this particular area?
Here to this particular area.
Uh-huh. So you believe that there's something very important happening this year, and this is why you're talking, one of the reasons why you're talking to us.
It's one of the reasons why I'm talking. I've kind of, if you would, come out of the closet, because I think that the people that I find have are the people now that are, say, 27 years old and younger, have gone through a school system that hasn't schooled them, hasn't trained them, and obviously, because if you know anything about education, has very specifically not trained them and not schooled them in political science, certainly, and in politics and in economics and certainly geoeconomics. And they just they don't have an idea of what's going on. And, you know, we look at a president that complained entirely about all the money that the previous president spent, and then in the first 90 days spent 10 times as much. And now it was turned over to the Fed to spend it, and the Fed, in congressional testimony on television, said, we don't have any idea where that money went. We have no idea. We can tell you where $2 billion of it went, but we certainly can't tell you where $7 trillion of it went or $6 trillion of it went. We don't have any idea. And, you know, the people have just let that pass by. Oh, that means that ourselves and the next 4 generations of progeny are going to have to work their whole lives to pay this debt off, and yet we don't even have any idea where it went or who has it. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly not out there helping the economy.
Mm-hmm. Now, if this occurs, would this be a worldwide problem?
Well, it is a worldwide problem.
Okay.
I mean,
like the collapse of the
look back at James Burke's programs on connections. And the thing of it is this is my opinion, but the unions had to do something to get the union members to pay their dues, and the only thing they really could do was increase their salaries. So the unions have increased their salaries to a point where the workers had to move offshore, because we don't have people that are willing to work and be blue-collar workers anymore. They want to work and get white-collar wages. The white-collar people want to get white-collar wages rather than wages that were consistent with their production. So in essence, they've stolen from the blue-collar workers and stolen from the rest of the world by loaning them money and then taking all their natural resources at very low rates. So this has happened all over the world. It hasn't just happened here. Mm-hmm. And so we're seeing economies beginning to fail everywhere. And we've been dealing with a system now for 70 years or better of fiat money, money that's backed with nothing. And it's like was said about the Irish when they moved into New York and into Boston. Everybody made money by taking in the neighbor's wash.
Sure. In your personal opinion, and if you can qualify that personal opinion, it would be useful. What do you think may happen if there's some tipping point of social instability or financial instability that occurs before the end of this year?
Well,
what can people expect?
Let's take a look at the Depression of in the late 20s. People had ethics. They had morality. Ethics and morality were removed from the school systems 25 years ago, and for specific reasons. It had nothing to do with reasons of ethics or morality. It had to do with political reasons. So they were taken from the school systems. So in the 20s, when we had a depression, people would go out to farmland and knock on the farmer's door and say, "Ma'am, I got 3 little kids that need to eat, and I'll shovel manure, I'll dig potatoes, I'll hoe the weeds out of the garden, I'll do whatever I need to do to get something to feed my kids." Now what people have been taught is that they're owed a living, they're owed to live like television says that people should live, and they don't have an ethic, they don't have a morality. And so what happens is if we have a financial collapse, it won't be like the 20s. It's going to be like today, and you're going to have anarchy and absolute chaos. And the government knows that. They've recently asked the service members if they would fire on civilians if they were asked to, which is entirely against the Constitution. We had a Second Amendment, and the founders of our country, in writing after the Constitution about where the Second Amendment came from, didn't say that we should have the right to keep and bear arms so that we could go get a deer and feed the family. They specifically stated we had the right to keep and bear arms so that if the government, with its military, got out of hand and tried to suppress the Constitution of the civilians, they could take control back, because the government was supposed to lie in the hands of the people. Now, not that I believe that the people are smart enough to handle themselves, because they're not. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had the last several presidents that we've had. We'd have actually had senators and congressmen thrown out because they wouldn't do for us what was necessary. And the senators and congressmen had no option, because we had so many splinter groups that they had to keep satisfied that they couldn't do what was necessary for the people as they were charged to do.
Is there anything you can say on record about a recent congressional session that you attended?
Yes, probably better not said.
Okay. All
But
right.
just note that there was the third, my understanding, it was the third ever closed session of Congress.
Okay. I understand.
But
And
it is on Google, so...
Yeah, I think many things have leaked out about it on Google. We found that no matter where the politician was and what committee he was on, when top secret things were talked about, they wanted to close the session early so they could get out and put their tips out to the news. So we don't have any confidentiality in that, so it leaked out, I'm sure.
And am I right in assuming that you wouldn't contradict those leaks?
I wouldn't contradict them at all.
Thank you.
But weren't they told to... Weren't some of them getting out of the country to relocate in South America? Ask them that.
That's my understanding.
Because George Green has given us testimony to that effect.
Yeah, that's my understanding, that a number of them felt that once the people found out what had been done to them by their representatives, they felt that it would be much better for their health and safety to be somewhere else.
And that kind of says it all. Do you know anything or suspect anything about, once the financial system fails, if it does so, what would it be replaced by?
Well, up until a few days ago, I would say it would have been replaced by a world currency. Remember, the last 4 presidents have all been members of the Council of Foreign Relations, and have openly stated that they're moving toward a one world government, and believe we should have a one world government. If we had a one world government, we'd probably have a one world currency. And it might even be they were smart enough to have a currency that was backed by something real, like gold or silver or various metals. I've always wanted to see a commodity-backed currency. So you could have a currency that was worth so much corn or so much wheat or so much, something that was a real tangible thing.
Up until a few days ago, you said.
Up until a few days ago.
What changed?
What changed was, my understanding is now that the NAFTA and GATT agreements basically put us into a system where we had Mexico, United States, and Canada almost as one government with 3 parts. And there was going to be, it's been highly rumored that there was a printed currency available, pictures available on the internet, et cetera, because there's nothing that's a secret anymore. That would have currency, different colors and different sizes for different denominations, and was to be called something like the Amero for North America. It's been rumored that that currency is being destroyed now and replaced by another U.S. currency that is being printed, and that would make a lot of sense because there's so much well, the money that's being printed is funny money because it's backed on nothing, but also there's been so much counterfeiting, especially out of Iran. And so you can look at some of our politics with Iran having to do with nuclear proliferation, and so much of it having to do with the fact that they have good printing presses and good duplicators of paper and ink. And there's been a tremendous amount of currency that we know has moved here from Iran that is counterfeit. And it's rampant.
Yeah. Many people watching this video will be aware of what David Icke has been talking about. And we spoke to him at length earlier on this year, and one of the drums that he's been beating is about what he feels is the danger of the population being chipped as a means of control, which is going to be linked with their ability to operate financially at all. Can you comment on that at all?
There are a number of things to lead one to believe that they are going to be shipping people around. There are a number of places that there's no explanation for, but very large concentration camps have sprung up. One of them very near where I live here, that's very large sized. And on the other hand, I was involved back in the 70s with a very large food and feed company to build chips that could be used on prize cattle and breeding cattle, for example, and show cattle, to geolocate them or to identify them. And that technology has now been reduced down to things that can be injected through a hypodermic needle and in the body and identify people. And the currency that I'd heard about that was to be a one world currency was based on being chipped, and the credits, if you would go onto and off of that chip by a method similar to Bluetooth that's used today.
And this is technology which you yourself have helped develop, is that what I heard you
Well,
say?
it's technology that had developed some of the early things, and it's technology which, in its smaller implementation, I'm using right now in a product that I'm in the process of building for geolocation and anti-theft, because there's so many people being kidnapped and sacrificed for their organs, or being kidnapped and held for ransom, not the least of which is around Mogadishu area and in the Mediterranean, but also even in Mexico. A tremendous number of people being kidnapped for ransom there, both their own people and visitors.
There's a problem tracking containers.
Problem tracking sea land containers as well.
Why is it important to track these containers?
Well, there are around 10,000 containers a day coming into the country that are never physically inspected. And we know that weapons of mass destruction, though this is not totally announced, but we know weapons of mass destruction are coming in those containers. We know terrorists are coming in those containers because we see the evidence of it afterward. And thank God the government has picked up a lot of these things later. But the containers, and a lot of them are shipping contraband. A lot of them are shipping, we saw the dog food come in that was laced with melamine because it wasn't inspected.
Now, we just did a tape change here, and just before that little interlude, David was very keen to ask Pete about his view about how can we transform these danger signs into something that is a healthy warning to us, and what sorts of proactive, positive thinking, responsible actions can we take without just blindfolding ourselves and ignoring whatever real risks there might be there. Now, this is my bridge because I want David to ask his own question. This is one of the reasons why he's here with us. We have a huge respect for David, his intellect, his perspective, his experience. And David, this is all yours. You want to talk to Pete about this very important thing here?
Sure. What I wanted to say was just that I have a perspective which includes documenting my dreams every day for the last 17 years, following their guidance, getting accurate information from that guidance. Yesterday morning, while we were talking about all these things, I had a dream in which there was a volcanic eruption. It looked terrifying. There were rocks flying into the air, and everybody around me thought we were all going to die. We ran under these trees. The rocks fell all around us, but we were all fine. Nobody was actually hurt by it. Obviously, it was a disaster. Obviously, it caused property damage, but the people were okay. And that's one of many different varieties of data that I've gotten to suggest that even though things look like they could be really austere and apocalyptic, that humanity will persevere through this, and that we will be able to have a positive outcome on our own future, and that this is not a situation that's completely outside of our ability to manage.
Well, David, you had a question that you asked me just before the break, and I think we're going to agree, but
Okay.
Go ahead and ask that question again, or make that statement again.
It was a very good question. It was about prior warnings not having come to pass,
Oh,
and
okay,
therefore
yeah.
why should we be concerned?
Yeah, let me give you some prelude to that. I spoke with another witness who was involved in various compartmentalized projects, one in particular, which was at the Montauk base. And he had extensive contact with people on the inside. And one of the things that he said was that the superdomes that were built in all the major cities were intended to be large holding containers for people to be herded in. And he said that there was a plan that the Rodney King riots would foment enough social upheaval that they would be able to actually round up black people who were rioting in the cities and put them inside these domes and basically keep them in there until they passed away. And that was a plan that was made, and it obviously did not happen. And so we've heard from many Project Camelot witnesses similar plans, timelines in which the powers that be, whoever they are, say apocalyptic things are going to happen. The dates come, strange things happen, yes, but it doesn't lead to an apocalypse scenario. So in private conversation with us, you had mentioned that there were other dates that came and went where they had said something like this might happen. They told you, some friends of yours inside told you something like that, and then it didn't actually turn into a social breakdown.
Yes,
Okay.
I did say that, and so the question is,
Well, the question is, in terms of, you had mentioned before that people have a conditioning to not think, and a conditioning of mind control. And you said that there is a degradation in the moral fabric of our society. So I think what we really need to know on a personal level is, what can we do to help ourselves not be indoctrinated by this passive programming that's coming out to us. And you mentioned aversions of mind control and things like that. I think that's an important key to not getting stuck in this trap.
I moved here because I was told by various people that I should geolocate and be in an area that would be safe when we eventually got a financial and therefore political collapse. And so there are certain things that I've done to make sure that myself and my family and my friends are safe from that. The question that David just asked is a little bit different, having to do with the fact that numerous ones of us have heard a bit apocalyptic things in the future, ranging from the fact that supposedly in the year 2011 or 2012 we have the end of the Mayan calendar and we have an apocalypse coming. People who are apocalyptic Christians say about the same thing, that the end times are here or coming. We've heard very, very dire things about the economic posture of the United States and the whole world, and we see things happening. We see Iceland, for example, declaring bankruptcy, and I hear from people that I know in the banking system that a number of the European states are going to follow them in bankruptcy, and when the U.S. currency fails, which I can't imagine that it won't because we've printed so much currency and put out there that's backed by nothing, it's all beginning to come home to roost. The T-bills and the bonds are coming back to us, and I can't see what's going to happen there. We have the huge collapse that when before the current president took office, $16 million was going to solve all the problem, and please get this bill through, and we can take $16 million and put it out in, and it barely passed, and we got that through, and then it seemed like 3 weeks later we didn't know where the $16 billion was even supposed to go or what for, because they passed the bill without even knowing what was going to happen. That $16 billion disappeared immediately, and now all of a sudden we needed $7 or $9 trillion, and then we needed 20, and so we don't have any idea where that went. And so the things we've heard in the past about there going to be a failure, the time came and left and there wasn't a failure, but this money was pumped somewhere, and of course the system had a lot more inertia than we anticipated. So now what we have is something that the actuality is coming to roost. I drive around in the town that I live nearby, the large town. It's about 50 miles south of me. And drive around there, and I look in the little malls and I look in the big malls. The big mall has closed. We only had one mall in the town, and it's a gross population nearly 750,000 people. And the one mall that we had, the people that had the mall failed and went bankrupt, and it's closed. All the stores that sell non-essential items, jewelry stores, bed and bath stores, etc., most of them have closed. Sporting goods stores, most of them have closed.
What you're saying is that we haven't been here before.
So we haven't really ever been here before. We've heard that things are going to happen, things are going to fail, but life continued on as normal, and the government continued to print money and pass it out to its friends and so forth. And so therefore, we're in a bit different set of circumstances. I moved here in 1999 because I was told by 2001 that the system was going to fail. And here we are 8 years later, or 9 years later.
In fact, you were ordered to come here.
I was. And so we found out that no, it didn't fail. And I'd go for a briefing, and there'd just be a shrug. We don't understand it. We don't have any idea why it hasn't failed. I mean, we just don't know. The only thing we can do is say there was so much inertia. And so now it's beginning to fail, and it isn't just beginning to fail. It's increasing on a logarithmic scale, and very shortly I see that it just about has to do that. Which then brings us back to the first question that David asked just before the break was, what do I see that we could offer the listeners out there, something that they might do? And I can say, well, in my personal opinion and what I've done, I put my money and my talent, my skills, and my abilities where my mouth is. I've come here and I'm self-sufficient. I grow all my own meat, all my own vegetables. I have stored up those things that are going to be critical to society. I've picked up the tools that I didn't have that allow me to do things in such an environment, in such a society, to produce things that are going to be necessary for people to have.
And you can even make your own radio and probably fuel your own truck.
Exactly right. And I have a number of vehicles that I now have engines that'll burn alcohol. I have the equipment, and I have the seeds, and I have the tractor, and I have the land, and I have the water to grow material that I can make alcohol from at a much larger rate than I need.
Now, a lot of people listening to this will say, but I'm in the middle of a big city and I've got a wife and a mortgage and 2 kids who are at school, and I hear what you're saying, but what can I do? I'm not in that situation. What would you tell them?
Well, I've taught survival for better than 40 years. And my particular area of expertise in survival was urban survival. And I was asked to write a book about urban survival, and I started the book out, and I can tell you that, and we got into that a little bit earlier, I can tell you that today there isn't any such thing as urban survival. Who knows their neighbors? In 29, people knew their neighbors and they had ethic and morality. Now the ethic and morality has been taken away from the children, and the children are now in their 20s and 30s.
The community's gone.
The community is gone. We don't have a community that would do that. And we have people that have children, and now some of them have a couple children. What are you going to do when your kids say, Daddy, my tummy hurts, I haven't had anything to eat for 2 weeks. And you smell the next door neighbor over there who was a wise squirrel and put something up, and you smell him out on his barbecue because he's got no power but charcoal, cooking a couple of freeze-dried steaks. And you have to ask yourself, what would that person do?
Okay. But there are a lot of psychological operations that have been put in place in preparation for all of this. And there's a mental self-defense, or mental preparation, emotional preparation, spiritual preparation. Is there something that you can speak to about that, whatever people's circumstances are?
I will do that, but first I want to suggest that take a look at the things that have happened. Forget the political, economic situation. Let's take a look at things that have happened in this country over the last, say, 4 or 5 years. You've got the debacle that occurred in New Orleans, and then you've got the next debacle that occurred in Texas and Mississippi. And you got to see that, no, all those people couldn't leave town because they got out on the freeway, and the freeway was jammed, and everybody got stopped, and they ran out of gas, and there wasn't any gas. The people that owned the service stations left to get out of town also, so there wasn't anything for the service stations. You look at New Orleans, it was, I knew people that were getting water to New Orleans that had been ordered a year. It was a year until it got delivered. There were people who got thousands and thousands of trailer houses that were stuck in the Midwest and never got shipped down there. Nobody got to use them. But by the time they got where they could have put them down there, the things had already decayed, and they found out they were made with the wrong materials, and they were outgassing toxic things.
Yep.
That was how well the government was prepared for that, and they saw it coming and saw it coming and saw it coming. Nothing happened. Then you look at the people that live along the Mississippi River and its feeding tributaries, and they've had floods virtually every year, and every year they have floods, and they go back and rebuild their houses with lots of insurance money, and then they have floods the next year. We have, the weather is changing, and I think it's changing to the colder rather than the warmer, but anyway, the weather is changing very definitely. It's changing right here where I live, tremendously so. And the last couple winters we've had 2 to 3 times the snow that we had the previous 10 years. And then we've had water from it, the major water problems. We had droughts for a number of years, and I live near a huge reservoir that holds enough land to irrigate the whole southern state a year or two, and it's been absolutely dry in the bottom, hardly a trickle, and now it's clear full and spilling over.
So in summary, you're saying that as a scientist, as an intelligent man, as somebody who's well connected on the inside with other scientists and other intelligent men, You think that there's a real problem?
I think that there's a major real problem, and I think that people who don't see that and don't realize that simply have put blinders on. And I think that what they should do is think, you know, maybe there's something to this, but at least we see that in major areas of the country, there have been problems where people needed to have a little supply of food left because they couldn't get to a store. Mm-hmm. They need to have things that if they have to leave their home, like in the area that I'm in, and in California especially, and in other states especially, there have been major fires that have gone on. People have been moved out of their homes, and when they left their home, they came back and they're crying on television, oh, everything's gone, everything's gone. And yet some of those people went to survival lectures that I gave, and they had copies of their driver's license, copies of their marriage license, copies of their insurance papers, copies of all the things they needed to have copies of. They had extras of all the children's pictures and extras of the journals and so forth put away in another location. And these are things that people can do to assure continuity even though there may be something come. California, we hear predictions about earthquakes all the time, and we see earthquakes all the time. And some are small and some are larger, but we hear the people that actually are predicting those things predicting very large earthquakes. They don't know it's going to be next year or the year after, but they know it's going to come. They know it's going to be large. They know people are going to lose things. Why don't these people have what's called a bug-out bag in their car where they can take off and leave the area? The government says, oh, you only need to have 3 days storage. But we look at where the government's come in time after time after time over the last 4 or 5 years and found out the government didn't have anything for them. Mm-hmm. They had to fend for themselves. And it was months sometimes before they had effort come in. It's very interesting to understand. When I teach a survival class, one of the things I do is right at the beginning of the class I put a velvet bag over people's head. And then I tell them I'm going to place a $10 gold piece somewhere in the room and have you all look for it. And whoever finds it gets to keep it. And so I do that, and then I say, okay, go look for it. And immediately someone says, oh, here it is. I have it. I found it. And everybody takes their bag and says, well, that's no fair. He didn't have a hood on. And I say, okay, so let's say that there's a big earthquake or a big emergency. And if you don't have a way of communicating, because the cell phones are going to be down, the radio stations are going to be down, if you don't have a way of communicating outside of those, it's like having a bag over your head. You're not going to know what roads are blocked. You're not going to know what roads have police that are not allowing people to go through. You're not going to have gasoline in your car. If you had a shortwave radio or an amateur radio, which are very inexpensive, you could listen to the radio amateurs who are going to be immediately there because that's what they're set up for, that's what they're trained to do. And if you had an amateur radio license, which anybody can get these days, it's like you had eyes. You can see where to go, where there's problems, where there are not problems, where there are riots, where there are not riots, and carry on and go there. If you had a bug-out bag in your car, you'd have gas and fuel and medical supplies and things to keep you warm, things to keep you cool, all packed up, ready to go, just a small bag. So there are a number of things that one could do to become aware.
But there's a lot that has been done to dumb down the population. And how can this be reversed? How can that be aided? And I want to make sure that David gets a chance to answer his own questions. What I'm trying to do is to support you in that, and I want to give you airtime here.
There is a compartment of reality that we can talk about in which people are on this planet and there are forces that appear to be almost outside their control to do anything about other than, as you said, preparations for the sake of survival. Then we also have another context, which is that you are apparently directly aware of extraterrestrials who are not strictly negative. In fact, you mentioned to us before that a lot of them are positive. And we know they're out there, we know they're visiting us. And while I don't believe they're going to just come down and save us from problems, there appears to be a greater reality that we are all involved in, and that this situation, my understanding is that the situations we're going through are going to be instrumental in helping to purge the negative influences on this planet that have been prevailing for so long, not make them worse. There will be certainly a crisis time that we go through, but that's part of a passage into a more organized and enlightened society. That's how it's been explained by many different accurate sources, in my opinion, including ancient prophecies that speak of the coming of a golden age.
Well, one of the things that I did in studying survival was I went to numerous places on the face of the earth where there were survival type things taking place, whether it be genocide in Africa, whether it be eruption of volcanoes, whether it be tornadoes and tsunamis. I've gone to those places studying survival, and I know one thing. There's one person I can rely on, and that's me. And all the rest is conjecture. I found out that the people that survived were the people that were prepared, and some were prepared mentally, and that's the major preparation that you could do. But I know that when you believe in other people, that may or may not happen, but if you believe in yourself and follow up, it does happen. And you don't have any worry. And I found out that a few days or a few hours or even a few minutes can be the difference between life and death. And so I would just as soon spend a little time and a little effort and a little money and be able to take care of myself and my people. And if other things happen, so much the better. I have things I can share with others.
Yeah, I don't dispute that at all. In fact, I am very well prepared for eventualities in myself. We also at Project Camelot have interviewed enough different witnesses that we are trying to look at the big picture perspective, and I do believe that we have an intelligently guided planet. I do believe that the things that happen on the planet are not random, and I do believe that society itself is going through an evolutionary process. And a lot of the things that you shared with us already off the record reveal that there are potentials of the human being much greater than what we currently understand. You've also suggested that there are efforts to suppress our natural ability that have been put in place. And I think that while absolutely preparing is important, I think anything you can tell us about how people can strengthen their intuitive faculty so that they have an ability to get in touch with that part of themselves that does have the knowledge. You've mentioned remote viewing before too. If they have some way, something you can share with us, a way in which people can greater empower themselves to the greater awareness that they actually possess, and how that could help them through these transitional times. I think that would be important to hear.
Well, actually, strangely enough, we really agree. And I think we're both saying that one should do both, because then you don't have to rely on anything. You don't have to rely on somebody else. And that's the problem. What's been taken out of people over the last 20 years is responsibility. People have to take responsibility. And if you look at over the millennia, the people that we've considered major prophets, such as the prophets of Mohammedanism, prophets of Christianity, prophets of records such as Nostradamus and so forth. Every one of those and all the religions have said, take responsibility and prepare yourself. And it's the things that David's talking about to prepare are exactly correct. People should have those skills. They should go out and practice those. And I know that your group has been superb in providing evidence and providing a website that's a fantastic website where they can go and look and find out people that are talking about such things, people that are saying such things. I'm basically a warrior because that's kind of my path. And I've noticed that there isn't anybody out there in this world that's taking care of me except me. And that's not necessarily true, because the knowledge, the intellect, the experience, the vast experience that I have has been handed to me on a silver platter. It's like I stuck my hand in the air to volunteer and got a hiccup in my rotator cuff, and my hand just stayed up, and I ended up volunteering for everything. And everybody thought I was volunteering, and so I got stuck into a number of different things. But none of it, as I look back on it, was by accident. And I know that there are a number of people that were students of mine that were in New Orleans, that were in the Gulf area of Texas, that were in the river areas in Ohio and Nebraska and so forth, and Tennessee. And I know that all of them, when the time came, just simply threw a bag in the back of their car and headed out, and they were fine, and all their family records were preserved, and all their family jewels and things, everybody knew where they were. They're all in one place, threw them in the car, off they went. The car was full of gas with a little trailer with a couple of gas cans and a tent, and they were fine. And I'm just suggesting that that is a very wise thing to do in the day like today. Whether the prophets of doom are correct or whether they're not correct, let's say you put aside 5 months worth of food. Well, go take a look at the prices in the store and the prices 5 months ago, and tell me you wouldn't like to buy 5 months ago's food, or today's food, at 5 months ago's prices. You know, it's better than any investment you could have made. It's better than any stock I know of. It's even better than gold. And if a disaster comes, it's going to be worth far more than gold, because it'll save your life, where gold will just get you robbed. Or silver. And I tell people, if you're going to save gold, for crying out loud, save some silver. Because if we have a collapse, when it comes, you know, get yourself a wheelbarrow, and if you come to my place and want a loaf of bread, and you've got an ounce of gold that's worth, at that time, $2,000, I'll swap it for a loaf of bread. And if you got a quarter, that by that time is worth $3, a non-numismatic silver quarter, I'll swap it for a loaf of bread. Take your pick.
Right.
So there are things that people can do that, and there are things that they can do. There are a number of remote viewing courses, and many of them are very good. I'd suggest you do remote viewing. But I said, besides remote viewing, I know one thing that's certain. I can take my little ham radio, and I can pick it up, and I can call on the ham radio repeater, and I say, what's the traffic like on Route 17 going out through Palmdale? And somebody's going to say, oh, all the cars are stopped and they're not letting people through. Or they're going to say, oh, the traffic's flowing just fine, and I know that's the direction to get out of town.
Sure. A lot of people would want us to ask this question. It's almost a matter of duty, and that is, how much does Obama know about all of this, in your opinion?
That's a strange question. I can't imagine anyone accepting the job of president with the current situation. I can't imagine that. So in that respect, I have to say he can't be very intelligent. On the other hand, he's an intelligent man. He certainly is an intelligent speaker. And of course, he was a debate king, if you would. And I know that when he got his first briefing, because I had friends that were present, said that he was so shocked that he had to sit down when he found out what really was happening. This was before he took the office. Now I think that he's found himself in a river that's flooded and headed south, and he's got a little boat with no oars.
And very steep canyon walls.
And steep canyon walls, and he's just paddling with his hands as fast as he can paddle, and trying to do the very best job that he can. He's has a few really good people around him, and I don't think that I really don't believe he has a hint how to stop what's happening. I don't think he has a hint how to stop the flood, because it's behind him, and it's coming on, and he's being driven by it, and there's not much he can do.
Now, Speaking about having good people with him, just using that turn of phrase, would you confirm that there are good people who we have euphemistically called the white hats in the government and the intelligence and in the military who themselves are patriots as you are and are trying to do their best from the inside to avert these things?
Absolutely. There are many people that left the military. Most of the good people left during Clinton and Bush because they couldn't pledge allegiance to the president because of the things that were being done. So many people left. On the other hand, there were many people that stayed behind because they knew they were going to be needed, and they sacrificed not principle, but they had a higher knowledge and stayed behind so that they could apply the knowledge that they had when the time came.
That's where they thought they would be most valuable.
That's where they thought they would be most valuable, and they were the true patriots because they did what was best for the people rather than what was best for themselves.
And these are the people who are keeping you informed sometimes, is that
Some
right?
of those people are the people who are keeping me informed.
I understand.
I mean, it's more that they're keeping me informed because they call me for ideas, and I'm kind of an idea man, and they call me and ask me what might we do here and what might we do there.
Because you're above all a problem solver and a technological...
I'm basically a problem solver.
Do you think there's ever going to be a disclosure that any of this stuff about UFOs or other races not born on Earth would ever get out to the public?
Well, I think it's interesting. I've been told that a number of the apocalypse films that have come out recently and a number of the science fiction things that have come out recently as movies have been partially funded by the government. Wanting to get familiar in our minds the idea there might be people that could come and help us. There might be some kind of divine providence that would help as well. And I've heard kind of through the grapevine that I know that Reagan was asked to disclose such things, the truth about flying saucers and alien people. I know that JFK was asked those things and said he would do something, and I know there was pressure put to bear on both of them to say nothing. I know that the current president, I don't know this, I have heard that the current president was planning to make such announcements later in the year or late in the year. And whether...
Are you willing to say the date when you and that information that you
no,
got?
I know a date I was told, and I can tell you the same people that told me that date told me that the U.S. currency would fail in 2001 when they ordered me to move here.
Okay.
So who knows what's going to happen, but I've heard that that his desire, and I may be wrong, I don't know. I've heard it through the grapevine. A man hasn't told me himself. And
He's under orders, isn't he? He's just the front guy.
my feeling is that we haven't had a president since right after George Washington that wasn't under orders from someone else. And if you go back and take a look at it, it's pretty obvious.
And then if the guy doesn't obey those orders, then he may find himself in trouble.
May find himself in trouble.
And you want to talk about who's behind him at all?
I really don't.
Okay.
Well, about the announcement, though, you were working up to an announcement. You were saying that he may announce something at the end of the year. What would that be? What does your grapevine tell you?
My grapevine tells me that he was going to announce that that there are indeed such things as flying saucers, and there is indeed technology transfer, and there is indeed beings behind it that didn't come from this planet.
And how many different kinds?
You know, we're getting into speculation here that,
Understand.
you know, whether the person that told me would know, I have no idea. Whether the president would know, I have no idea. Whether we even know, I have no idea.
Sure.
But a number of them, more than say 3 or 4.
Good.
And then if you go, well, again, if you go back and look at the number of people who seem to have seen such people, you know, you get kind of a, well, there's a reptilian type, and there's a a long face type and a round face type and a tall type and a short type, and but you get, it isn't just like one person said this and one person says that. It's 50 people in the US and 20 people in Germany and 300 people in Brazil and 80 people in Africa say this.
Yeah.
And then for the next bunch, there's maybe 40 or 50 in Russia and 25 or 30 in Germany. And, you know, you can't discount all of those things when from totally disparate regions that have no real communication and people have no real communication with each other, you hear people doing exact descriptions and large amounts of exact descriptions.
And tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, reporting contact with the little guys with the almond-shaped eyes and the big heads,
right?
Who many people say are responsible for abductions. Do you know anything about that at all?
All I know is that I've talked to a number of those people, and many of them seem to me to be very credible. Many of them seem to me to have read somebody else's report and then they wanted to be in the thing and made it up.
Okay. Are any of these abductions military operations?
I wouldn't have any idea.
You don't know? Okay.
Look, I can't see why the dollar didn't crash in 2001. Absolutely couldn't see why it didn't crash. Because it was backed with nothing. And it was inertia, in my opinion, it was inertia only that carried it on. And sure, there were a lot of people behind the scenes manipulating various things. You saw how they manipulated billions and billions of dollars that didn't even, not only were bogus dollars, i.e. dollars that were printed with nothing behind them, dollars that didn't even exist. I mean, people fail to look at this fact. If let's say, and we'll use just round figures, let's say that there's $1,000 issued. Okay, who issues the dollars? The Fed issues the dollars, totally outside of the Constitution as far as I'm concerned. The Fed issues $1,000. Let's say they then rent those dollars to the bank. What does the bank do? The bank rents those dollars out to people so they can buy a car, a home, whatever. And they say, we'll rent this out to you and it'll be at 5% interest. Now what that means is they've taken $1,000 and they can, if they have $1,000, the banks are allowed to loan out $17,000. So you have, let's say you have 10% interest on $17,000. So now that's $10,000 plus another $7,000. Where does the $7,000 come from to pay it back? It wasn't ever issued. It didn't ever exist. Yeah. How can they pay back more than there ever was? And people don't understand the concept of, you know, fiat money.
Yeah,
right.
It will be.
There are many videos on Google that people can watch on this very subject and get educated.
Yeah, absolutely. And the problem is that people have been taught if you just stick your head in the sand and don't look, it isn't going to bite you.
And keep on watching American Idol and you'll be all right.
And keep on watching American Idol and keep on going to the movies and keep on, you know, whatever.
I'd like to say one thing. There is footage that you can see of an announcement that Rumsfeld made on September 10th, 2001, about money that was lost in the military budget to the tune of $2.3 trillion the day before September 11th. So is that in any way related to what you're talking about with the year 2001?
Probably is, and there are a number of other things. Let's look what happened on September 11th. A building that wasn't even involved crashed to the ground, and in the basement of it was stored a massive amount of gold. It was never found. Okay, never found. And why would that building fall down? Not even ashes fell on it. It was out of the wind pattern.
Right.
Where did that money go, and why did that building fall down?
Well, do you know the answer?
Well, I think I know the answer, but I don't know that I'm convenient with giving that answer because, you know, I don't want to prompt somebody to go look for it because I know what I feel they'd find. I think what they'd probably find is an early grave.
By now, people watching this video will understand why we were so keen to introduce Pete to this audience, and will understand what we were saying when We referred to 12 hours of off-record conversation yesterday that we haven't even begun to bottom out even so. And what we're able to provide here is only a very short summary of some of the things which Pete knows. And so with apologies, we're going to move on, because we've only got a certain amount of time and a certain amount of tape, to other areas, because there's an extraordinary amount of experience and information which you may want to share. And let me first of all ask you if you're willing to share any of your experience about working with Russian scientists and in what capacity you did that.
Yes, I'd be more than happy to do that. Some of it at least. After the fall of the wall, I went to Russia and worked with a number of top scientists there that were involved in their space program.
And you went to Russia, let me say euphemistically, in a professional capacity?
Yeah, in a professional capacity. And I came by invitation and went there. One of the things we did was we took, and I'm going to use Russia in general terms, meaning the old Soviet Union. I went to
the USSR.
Various countries that were at one time part of the USSR. And I was there, for example, when Ukraine declared their independence. Mm-hmm. And I knew the man who was the first president there. And so we took out of the USSR a lot of technology that had been pent up and brought back and donated it to the government here. And I got to see brilliant technology that some we knew about, some we had, and some we didn't have. Specifically in material science and in things that could be used to generate alternative energy, new ways of building motors, new types of materials for building motors and spacecraft, motors and spacecraft. New ways of storing electricity in capacitors, which would be very handy in making electric automobiles, meaning that you could take all the energy that normally is sent to the air as heat in braking and put that energy into a capacitor device, which would then bleed off into a battery and recharge the battery of the car to a certain extent.
Did the technology behind the Aurora come from the Russians?
No. That technology was invented specifically right here in the United States by a scientist that in my memory, worked for General Dynamics for a period of time, and probably worked for Rocketdyne or General Atomic for a period of time. Remember, General Atomic was highly disturbed when Lyndon Johnson refused to give them any more government contracts unless they'd move from San Diego to Texas.
But the Aurora has been mothballed anyway, because that's old technology anyhow.
I would assume that.
Okay.
But it was a technology where you spray gas out through a surface and then explode the gas, mix it with oxygen, and explode it, and it was like push shooting a pumpkin seed. The pressure external would push against it and push it forward at very high rates of speed.
Okay.
And very efficient.
Okay. So that was our 60-second soundbite about the Aurora, which is worth an interview in itself. But go back to what you feel that we learned from the Russians, because we had some fascinating conversations about this.
Well, we learned an awful lot about material science. There was a man by the name of I.M. Francevic that was a believer in quantum physics, and so he wouldn't hire anybody. This was in the late 50s or mid 50s. He wouldn't hire anybody for his institute that didn't absolutely believe in quantum physics. So a lot of the work they did was based on quantum physics, and we hadn't quite decided whether that was real or not. And whether it was real or not, they came up with a lot of things that were very interesting. Additionally, they were doing a lot of research work in such areas as remote viewing and telekinesis and such things. And we learned a lot. We brought a number of people out from there that taught us things. And this was a very interesting thing that happened in the Soviet Union. If you look at their government, it's kind of a three-branch party system that you have the people from industry, the people from government, and the people from the political pedagogy. That so that the vote, to get the full vote, you had to have someone vote that it wasn't in violation of Stalinist-Leninist political dogma. And a lot of science was definitely outside of Stalinist-Leninist political dogma. And therefore the scientists were very frustrated, and so there was a lot of information they were willing to give out because their government had told them it was baloney anyway, so why not give it away? They wanted to see their ideas and thoughts utilized. And secondly, there were a lot of them that one way or another snuck out and came to work for the West and brought a lot of very good information, including a lot of the very basic things that were happening in what we'll call psychic phenomena or mental talents. It really isn't that. It's actually a definite science, and there's a lot of technology that's behind it, and we hear a lot of stories about that from the government, a lot of past history that's much of it disinformation, and we're told that, well, we learned a few things from it, but it wasn't particularly good, and I think that that's very wrong because I know it was particularly very good. And I can't imagine that they're not using that kind of technology. Additionally, we learned a tremendous amount of things about outer space technology. We learned a lot about the amount of radiation that you find in outside the ionosphere and the problems that causes. We had some problems with our early astronauts because we didn't know what was there. And notice there were several lulls in our space program as we found out new things and then geared up to take into account the malevolence of outer space. And you know, out of that came a lot of conjecture that there was way too much radiation for us to have had people in outer space. And one of the things that very much interested me was when the Mir space station was crashing and they were worried about the fact that it had a little radioactive material on it that might cause problems on Earth, and they didn't know exactly where it was going to fall. But one of the things the Soviets announced, and one of the things I do is I listen to shortwave, because when you listen to shortwave you hear about the same event, the same people, the same place, the same time, and a completely different story of what went on there. So the press in the United States is either completely ignorant or it's completely controlled as far as I can tell. But one of the things the Soviets did was announce the weight of the Mir station. And when you look at that weight, you find out it was about 5,600 shuttle loads of material. And they didn't launch that much, we didn't launch that much. And so why would the Mir weigh as much as it did? And the explanation is, which you can find out for yourself if you merely take a sensitive Geiger counter on a plane flight, is how much radiation is up there just at 30,000 feet. And you're allowed one or two chest x-rays a year. You get a chest x-ray every 2 or 3 minutes. And out there, you know, that was a problem. If you look at some of the symptoms of problems some of the early astronauts had, you'd realize that it probably was radiation poisoning.
How did the mass that constituted all that extra shielding in
My feeling that the extra mass that was there on that station was shielding.
How did it get up there?
That's an interesting question. I didn't see us launch anything that could have taken it there.
Did the Russians launch it there?
Not that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've seen...
Okay. Now, what that implies then is that we could never have made it to the moon in the way that it had been advertised that we went to the moon, because everyone would have been fried. Is that too simplistic a conclusion?
Well, that's my conclusion. I mean, I know one thing. You can go to look at the moon diorama at Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and you can ask the question, was the lander pressurized with oxygen? They said no, we didn't have a place for it. They had to wear their spacesuits. And here's the astronaut standing there with his spacesuit on, and here's the door to the lander open, and you can see that that spacesuit wouldn't fit through that door without the astronaut in it.
Yeah, right. But
So
now,
I did have a bit, you know, there's a bit of speculation there.
what we've been told by our witness, Henry Deacon, is that some of the Apollo missions did actually go to the moon, but not without help from our friends, as it were. Can you make any comment on that, or is this
Well,
not?
it's my feeling as a scientist that if we went to the moon, we had to have help from friends.
Okay.
And all 4 old friends you're talking about.
I'm talking about
We're talking about friends in high places.
friends in high places,
Okay.
from high places.
Yeah. But we do have friends in high places, do we?
As far as I know.
Do we have any enemies?
As far as I know, we do.
And is
I
that
mean, there have been malevolent things happen all over the world that, you know, you can't deny cattle mutilation. And you can't deny some personal or human mutilation,
right?
or certainly biomedical manipulation. I mean, it's happened. Somebody did it, and it could have been done from here. But when you examine that, you know, Linda Moulton Howe has written extensively and spoken extensively on these things and examined them extensively. I grew up with her in the same school system in the same town, and know that she was exceedingly bright and got brighter and brighter as time went by. And I don't doubt that a lot of her conclusions are correct conclusions. She's someone that I would absolutely trust in that. And it appears to me, you know, I say if something happens in one spot, you don't know. But when something happens time after time, year after year, in all different kinds of locations where people don't know each other and don't communicate with each other and don't read each other's newspapers, and it doesn't make the press, it seems highly likely that those things happened.
I understand. Now, among many other things, you are, let me use the word, an electronics genius, if I may. And are you in possession of any information about the constitution of implants that have been recovered from abductees?
Well, I've talked to people who have removed what they felt were implants. I deal almost daily with nanoelectronics and microelectronics, and the descriptions and pictures I've seen have nothing to do with any nano and microelectronics that we have in this, you know, from anyone that I know of here on this planet. Many of them are, or most of them are biological in nature. I know that one doctor who's removed a number of what they felt were implants, the implant acted like it was alive and moved through the body away from the surgeon trying to remove it. I knew that some of them, when they were taken out, were minutely dissected, and I've seen the pictures of that. And they're devices that signals could be obtained from that were obviously intelligent signals. They were not random things, they were not biological things. And yet it was biological material that had obviously been engineered for a specific purpose.
That's really
And
valuable.
I've never seen anything in writing that would lead me to believe that we had that kind of technology on this planet.
And when we're talking about friends or enemies in high places, you'd feel that wasn't a particularly friendly thing to do.
I have no idea. It could well have been. And I wouldn't doubt but what we've had that from both sides, friends and enemies.
Okay.
I think there are people here, there are people that I felt had crucial knowledge to the perpetration of the planet the way we'd like it to be. And I've seen them saved from disease miraculously, but they had some incident that they seemed to have a memory of that we would call maybe an abduction or maybe a kidnapping and manipulation.
So they're being helped and supported.
They're being helped and supported, it appears, from somewhere.
Yep. Yep. Our experience would support that. All the testimony we received from a lot of people. It's just interesting to hear your view. This is something we didn't even talk about yesterday.
Well, I try to look at everything from a scientific viewpoint, from a really unbiased observational point of view. And being as I got involved in quantum physics early, which is something that deals a lot with probability, I try to figure the probabilities of things, make observations and feel the probability. Well, what would this mean from a probability standpoint? What's the probability that it just happened spontaneously, and the probabilities are approaching zero? What's the probability that we had something that would do this? Probabilities are zero or very low. What's the probability that it might have come from some outside intelligent source? The probabilities are up in the 99% region. and then after you see one after another of these, you begin to think, maybe I'm on the right track here.
Yeah, when does it become a reasonable certainty? Yeah, right. We've just mentioned the testimony from our witness and colleague Henry Deacon, and now you talked about your experience working with quantum physics. You told us about, sorry, let me start this again. Henry told us about his research work in what some people call signal non-locality, or action or communication at a distance. One of the holy grails of physics is to build a working device such that there can be instantaneous communication that can traverse light years in no time. Is this something which you're able to talk about at all? Do you have any opinions, experience?
Well, I've done a number of experiments, and I definitely have opinions, and I can say that Maxwell was right. One of the things I found out was...
This is James Clerk Maxwell.
James Clerk Maxwell, who wrote the first exposition of electromagnetic theory. And from a little bit of his work, the way I like to describe his work, it's like you took a white sheet of paper and he took the end of a paintbrush and dipped it in paint and made splotches all over this white sheet of paper. He said, here's something I saw, here's something I believe, here's something I've experimented on, and so forth. So now you have a white sheet of paper with a lot of splotches, which I liken to a window that you could peek through just a few holes in the window, and each time you peek through you see something different. There's a lot of the area that was still white that he hadn't done any experiment in, but there were a lot of various areas where he actually did something and had experiments that were repeatable and were eventually describable, if not explainable. So then he took one large bunch of these and he wrote electromagnetic theory around that. And so that electromagnetic theory allowed us to build motors and generators, electric motors, electric generators, radio transmitters, television transmitters, radio and television receivers, computers, internet, etc., over a period of time. And so that was passed on down through a line of scientists, engineers, physicists, and so forth, and became those motors and television and so forth. But what happened to all the other splotches? Many of them were never continued. The knowledge was never continued. It was never written about, etc., etc. So early on, I went and replicated most of the papers, most of the notebooks, most of the letters that went back and forth, and I started looking at some of these other things. One of the things that got out that people did look at was a thing called action at a distance, which meant that something happened in point A, and at point B, which could be clear across the universe, information could be sent from point A to point B faster than the speed of light, and it didn't travel, it literally went through some sub-universe or parallel universe from A to B instantaneously and with no energy required. Just now in Canada, and in Belgium and in France and in some areas in the United States. There's a tremendous amount of research being done in that. And so it's something it's been known at MIT, for example, for many years. But MIT knows if they talk about it, they got to back up and say all the physics we're teaching isn't exactly correct. So that really hasn't happened, but they want to know that if Harvard says something, that they can say we've known about it for years. And there was a gentleman that I had met several occasions that ran a kind of an anomalous research institute that found that these things that kind of violated the pet laws of physics, they continued to take a look at them, but they knew that if that actually worked and was something that could be repeated, that they better revise their thinking. And for one reason or another, mostly ego, political, or economic, a lot of that stuff wasn't brought out.
What can you say about whether there were any practically functioning devices built that were able to utilize this theoretical principle of communication or action at a distance?
Probably nothing.
Okay. I remember that Henry Deacon said that he had actually worked on these devices. He said that the work had been done at Livermore prior to Alan Aspect's experiments in Paris in the 80s.
Yeah, the problem is when you said practical.
Okay.
Now here's a problem. If you have something that works that doesn't use electromagnetic radiation, you have to develop a whole entirely new technology. Like, how do you tune it? You know, when you tune a radio, what you're doing is altering the problems with practical. We may have a practical technology or not. I know that once I get my lab built, we're going to have a practical technology because I have a lot of work that I've done and ideas that I've done, and I now need to build a prototype. And it's how to tune something that doesn't have a time function. And so how can you transmit more than one signal at a time? And then I don't necessarily want to expose that information because not that it's going to be a billion-dollar product, which it would be. I mean, imagine a cell phone that'll work anywhere in the universe with no energy, or such little energy that it's inconsequential. And so, or internet that works that way.
As Hal Puthoff once said to me, somebody who I believe you once know, he said to me, as the dog said, so many trees and so little time.
Exactly right, exactly right.
So at this point, I'm going to thank you very much for the conversations we've had both yesterday and today. We're still on tape. We've got some time left here today. I'm going to hand over to Kerry with the microphone and the camera. David also wants to ask you some questions about his particular interests, and we want to make sure that we can capture all of this as we possibly can do. So with huge reluctance, I'm going to get out from behind this camera because I'd love to talk to you for hours more. I hope we're going to get this opportunity later.
Thank you very much for your interest. Been involved with trying to build flying saucers. You usually found flying saucers, if you look at most of the movies, there's always seems to be a robot involved with it.
Okay, now, Pete, one of the questions I had for you is that you had mentioned before that you didn't like the term consciousness field, and you would prefer the term information field. And I was wondering if you could explain why that distinction was made in your discussion.
Because to me, the consciousness field deals with consciousness, and the information field is mostly unconscious.
I'd like to double-click on that and get more information on that link.
Well, the information field holds everything in the known universe. And there's consciousness, each person has their own consciousness and their own consciousness field. It's like it's one of the characteristics of individuality, or I'll say information field. It's one of the characteristics of the information field that I think the best English word for it is soul or spirit. And the individual consciousness field of each person is very, very different. And the information field holds everyone's consciousness, while the consciousness field holds each individual's consciousness, or their, I guess we could say, spiritual characteristic, though I use spiritual in a very different method than it's used by religions.
My witness Daniel referred to spirit as the intellect. He said that the intellectual aspects of mind are non-local, that they're not happening in the nervous system at all. They're in the field where those cognitive processes take place.
I absolutely agree with that. They're definitely non-localized. They're in the consciousness field, which is not localized with the person whatsoever. It's everywhere and every when. It's not a device. It's not a part of the neural or even non-neural anatomy. It's a field. It's like a magnetic field or an electric field in some respects, in the respects of a field, but it's non-local, even though it appears to be somewhat centered around the actual individual. It may be what some people call the aura, but it also has tentacles, if you would, that extend through time and space to infinity.
There's a Russian scientist named Budakovsky who takes a holographic photograph of a healthy raspberry plant, shines that light into a raspberry tumor, and the tumor cells rearrange into healthy raspberry cells, and it grows a new plant. Are you familiar with anything like that?
Well, I am. I wasn't aware of that experiment and would very much like to be, because I'm looking for things that I can instrument and observe to try to come to some conclusions, but that to me would be a necessity that things be that way.
Right.
And for example, one thing I found in human medicine, I'd like to be familiar with the experiment, but for example, I found out in human medicine, for example, I've come to the conclusion and feel I can prove that to any competent neuroanatomist that the DNA is merely a factory that generates the physical part of the body. The DNA gets its information from the informational field and how to do that. So you find that the informational field is eternal and holds the spirit or the being or the information of the person in perfection. Whereas the perfection then runs through the factory. If the factory is missing the thing that puts the wheels on, the wheels are going to fall off, if you would. And so the DNA problems that you get with human health and anatomy are errors that are in the DNA, which it appears are pretty much passed down through the family tree, and but there's also information that comes down through the family tree, and that's shown by a lot of work that was done by Joseph Chilton Pierce, for example, reported by him in The Magical Child. And there's information that's transmitted to heart tissue, actually brain tissue that's in the heart, and that holds most of the person's information about emotional things and a lot of information about taste. For example, they found people with heart transplants all of a sudden love mustard when they couldn't stand it beforehand. And they find that the person that was the donor loved mustard. They find that the person that was the donor was a very loving person, where the person who lost the heart lost it because of a lot of frustration and a lot of stress, and they were a person that wasn't a loving person. Now they become a very loving person, and the people around them have no idea how to relate to them.
Does each person have the same degree of contact with this information field or consciousness field?
I would doubt that they do, because they're all individual. For example, there are people who just seem to be informationally troubled, if you would, which has nothing to do with being, personally troubled, but they seem to have problems even when you go in and correct things in their. This is from a health field, because I spent many years in that field building medical instruments, and they were all computerized, and we had, years and years and thousands of patient visits that we could go back and take a look at and correlate the long-term data. Those instruments have been out there now for 28 years in the marketplace, and some 16,000 plus instruments around the world, and well over 1.5 million patient visits. So we have correlated that data and have shown that much of this must be the way that things are. So like the statement that you made was one that I absolutely agree with, that that out of necessity there has to be an informational field, and out of necessity there has to be something that drives the DNA. And then we find now we've done some experiments showing that we can generate this field around the body, and the body will act as if the DNA were perfect. If they had a genetic disease, the genetic disease goes away. Now with the advent of stem cell research, we find out that we can use a person's own stem cells in the body and heighten this field around the body, and the cells they had that are replicable cells that had a genetic problem, the genetic problem goes away because the informational field holds the perfect information rather than the flawed information of the gene itself.
Well, that's like the Budakovsky raspberry thing I told you.
Exactly.
Tumor is transformed, yeah.
Yep.
How could someone strengthen their contact with this field that they have? Do you have any exercises or ways, technology perhaps, anything that they could do?
I have technology that could do that, and that's one of the products that I intend to come out with once we get the laboratory and factory completely built.
Well, that's tantalizing. Well, I mean, what what have you done?
Well,
what could you do? What could it do for someone?
We'll know that once we get it done and do the testing on it. So I know what I think it would do, and we've been very successful with these instruments. The American Medical Association publishes every year the number of clinical diagnoses that they feel that their doctors got correct. And this year it jumped all the way up to 6% from 5% the previous year. We have 85% of the patients that are that use the medical equipment that I'm talking about. 85% of the patients feel that within 2 days they don't have what they had when they came.
Do you believe in acupuncture points on the body?
Well, I have to believe in them because they're there, and you can go to Radio Shack or you can go to Harbor Freight and buy a $4 or $5 meter and adjust the meter appropriately and run those on the body and find every one of the points, put a little dot there, go compare yourself to an acupuncture chart, and you'll look exactly the same. And I did find out how the acupuncture system works. There have been a number of people that postulated it, but they didn't show that it worked. And I worked with Dr. Jean-Claude Duras at the French Institute of Science. He's a very famous acupuncturist. He taught the Chinese acupuncture. They did away with acupuncture in the 20s and made it illegal, even though it was practiced down every alley. And then during the Cultural Revolution, they brought it back. And the reason for that was they had a huge plague, and acupuncture wouldn't cure the plague, but penicillin would. So the French missionaries brought in penicillin, and so they did away with acupuncture and went with penicillin. But acupuncture has its definite uses, as does the sister of acupuncture, which is Chinese herbal medicine. And it makes sense. If you put certain chemicals in the body and certain precursors, you're going to get certain chemical reactions out of the body. So anyway, the acupuncture system is very interesting. What we did is we injected radioactive potassium into each acupuncture point, while the person was under a high-speed CAT scan machine, and we found that the radioactivity moved directly to the organ associated with that point for the 3,300 years that the Neijing has been around talking about it, and for the 6,200 years that Ayurvedic medicine has been talking about it. So we found there was a direct correlation to the, not only to the organ system, but to actual parts of it. For example, down the outside of the thumb, you have a point that gives you information about the entire lymphatic system, just below the first joint, but above the first joint, it talks about the lymphatics that are in the tonsillary ring. And when we inject here, the radioactive material goes to the tonsillary ring. We inject here, it goes to the whole lymphatic system. And you go down and it you know, goes on down the body. And the same thing, you know, as you work across the hand, you have lymph and lung and circulation and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Come over here and you have the heart and the small intestine. And you can go down and inject here, and it goes to the mitral valve. Here it goes to the aorta. Here it goes to the, you know, this chamber, that chamber, et cetera, et cetera. Then you go down on the feet. The acupuncture points to the same thing. We also found that the acupuncture points, the acupuncture meridians aren't veins, they aren't vessels. The acupuncture meridians, as they're called, aren't really meridians. They're made up of that, if you've ever cleaned a game animal or a chicken, you'll notice that between the organs, or done surgery, between the organs is a white filmy layer. That layer is built up like a baklava. It's built up in a number of layers, and each of those layers is a capacitive, conductive surface, not meant for conducting materials such as radioactive potassium, but it works as does anything in the body. The body's a biological mechanism. It works like the intestine does peristaltically, like the heart does peristaltically, and it's ionic in nature, so it's polarized, and so it pulsates and moves information. So that system was an information system, and the points are just above and below each joint, and you have them down each side of the hand. They're around at an area that's about 45-degree angle toward the finger, and you can take something like a ballpoint pen. I don't see one here, but you can take just the not the point of the pen, but the point of the case, and you can probe about 45-degree angle just above and below each joint. And most people don't know there's a joint just like this joint and this joint and this joint right down here at the wrist, and you can probe those places, and on ones where you're having a problem with the organ or organ system, you'll find a little hard nodule under the skin just above and below the joint, about a 40, and if you rub back and forth past those ones that aren't too bad, once you don't have a bad problem, you'll feel a little nodule, but it will actually palpate like it were a little grain of rice filled with a coarse sand. You'll feel a grittiness or a graininess. And you go up below the joint and above the joint, and so you can tell where you have a problem. Now, what acupuncturists don't want you to know is if you take something that's a little milder rounded and rub that point, it'll feel really good if you have a problem there. And if you take a piece of metal and do the same thing, different points will feel differently, because the metal things tends to discharge in excess of electric field there, and the plastic would tend to charge up a point of extra field there. And it turns out there's a type of material called an electret. An electret is to electric field like a magnet is to magnetic field. So there's a way of putting a permanent electric charge on a piece of plastic. All the microphones in little tape recorders you've ever seen, 99% of them are electret microphones, where you have a little piece of film with a permanent charge. As the voice hits it, the film vibrates, and then there's a piece of metal next to it, and you measure the voltage between the two, feed it into the device, and that's where the voice signal comes from. So you can make an electret and rub various points, and it'll just feel really good, and you'll rub it 1 time or 50 times, and all of a sudden it'll quit feeling good, and you move on to the next point. If you do that on your fingers and on your feet, you'll feel really, really good. It'll normally alleviate almost any problem you have. And that's what an acupuncturist does. They can find where those places are that you need to have a treatment and do it that way. Another way to do it is to use an acupuncture needle and stick it into the point to charge it or discharge it. And there's a way to put it in to do either. So one of the products that we came up with is two little pieces of metal that you can have little indentations on them, and you can rub your points. And those pieces of metal had a number of holes in them, and people asked us what the holes were for, if it was critical to the use of the unit. I said, no, that's where you tie a shoelace. And if you loan it to somebody, you keep one hand with a shoelace around, because they won't give it back to you. It feels so good. And so we have tooling to make those, and I probably need to make another batch of them. But anyway, we found that these are there. Now it turns out that these points, like this is the lymphatic system here, and this is the lung system here. And if you go clear to the end of where, and there are points up the body, if you go clear to the end of where that meridian is, they all end at a tooth root. The teeth are piezoelectric. When you squeeze a piezoelectric material, it generates a voltage.
It's a charge.
Or if you take a piece of piezoelectric material and apply a voltage, it expands or contracts. The teeth are piezoelectric. So that's why you should take very good care of your teeth. And don't get a root canal unless you absolutely have to have it. And not that you'll die, but your health will go down. And so there's some things that we have. These little devices will make up for that and will charge you up. And so especially people who are missing a lot of teeth get a real success from that. And they have very, very pronounced little nodules, and their nodules usually are hard like a rock. And if they keep massaging them from time to time until it quits feeling, it feels as good as a scratch on a good itch. And when it quits feeling good, move to the next one. And after a period of time, you'll feel the granularity, and after a period of time, it'll just get softer, and there won't be any little nodule under the skin.
My mother had a large nodule right here, and it finally went away, but she worked on it for a couple of years. It was on the middle finger.
I have one here, as a matter of fact, and it comes and goes.
So you're saying that the tissues around the organs have an ionic transfer system, which is
to the organ, not that they're around the organ, but they go all the way up the body. If you start stripping out neural tissue, in fact, it's a kind of an interesting thing. Most people don't know, but lions and tigers never eat muscle tissue. It's highly toxic. They strip out the blood veins, the vessels, the neural tissue. They eat intestines, and they eat, the heart and the internal organs. They don't eat muscle tissue.
Really?
Yep. If they feed them muscle tissue, and they only give them muscle tissue, they'll eat it, but they get very ill. It's very highly toxic. But people eat all the muscle tissue and throw the good parts away.
Does that mean that we shouldn't eat a good raw steak if you're a meat eater?
Unfortunately. It's very obvious that I eat anything that's slower than I am. But that does mean that. As good as it tastes, it's not good for you.
I'm just trying to understand.
That's also why the kosher meats have a very specific way of sneaking up on the animal and not alarming them, and very mercifully putting them out of their demise, is because they don't want that animal to get excited and release a lot of toxin into the muscle tissue.
This is not,
whether they know it or not.
This is not the typical nervous system you're talking about with sodium.
No, there's no nervous system there. That's what I'm saying. It's a completely different system. There was a Korean fellow, Kim Bon-jung, who postulated that he said that I found the neural system, and here are pictures of the little tubules that carry a yellow fluid, etc., etc. And that's all been recorded, and you can find that all over the internet, and you can find it all over medical literature. But what it doesn't report is that 4 years later he committed suicide and said he was sorry for perpetrating such a hoax. There isn't that system. People looked for it and couldn't find it, and finally he just had to admit that he made it all up. And so that isn't the system. We found how it worked because we injected the radioactive potassium, and then we looked at it and watched it go through the body. And it goes exceedingly fast. If you took blood from the tip of this finger and traced it back to the heart, it doesn't move very fast. It moves very, very slowly. It doesn't race through your veins. It jerks too. But if you inject the radioactive potassium here, we had to get a higher speed CAT scan machine to even see it. It really races. And it's the frequency of this. It's like milking a cow or a goat. It's a peristaltic action, and it really races through there. It's a very high frequency.
Now you're saying this is all happening with some interface with the consciousness field or the information field?
Informational field.
Okay. And
Yeah,
could you explain that? What's the energetic component?
That's a couple-hour lecture.
Well, could I get the elevator version?
There's not really an elevator version. It depends where it is, what the problem is, which meridian it is.
Okay, if an organ is dysfunctional, why would it matter what's going on in your hand?
It doesn't. It
Then-
makes what's going on in your hand. It creates what's going on in your hand.
Okay. So because they're the extremities, somehow...
Because we're built that way.
You're saying you can either heal it on the hand or you can heal it directly on the organ, right?
No,
No?
I wasn't saying that at all. What I'm saying is that problems in the organ manifest themselves both physically and informationally at the appropriate points on the body. Now, if you think about it, when you build a car, any car that you've had in the last 10 or 12 years has an electrical connector under the seat, and you plug a computer in there and it'll say the oxygen sensor is bad, the brakes are getting weak. It'll say a number of things. So let's assume that somehow, whether divinely or by genetics, we were designed. Why not design a system where you could test the thing? I mean, we don't come with an operator's manual, but maybe we come with a system that is very easy for us to find out what the problem is and then alter things. Now, one thing we found out is that every substance has an informational field around it. We found out that a way to take that substance, place it on a device, and from the device find a numerical signature for that information field. Then we found a way, therefore, to store it in a computer. Now we can take the computer and run that information back out and generate an informational field. We can make that field large so it surrounds the body, and we can then measure in real time at these points, most of which are acupuncture points and some aren't. There are some acupuncture points that we find don't do anything, even though they're classical points. Now, 6,000 years ago or 3,300 years ago, they didn't have any kind of measurement instruments, so we now have a biofeedback system that will actually do that.
A lot of our audience is going to think of the Rife machine when you say these numerical signatures.
That's very unfortunate,
Okay.
because there's no correlation whatsoever. Has nothing to do with the Rife machine.
Okay.
Didn't you work for Royal Rife?
I worked for Rife for a period of time, yes, and I know how his instruments worked, and it has no bearing on this whatsoever. This is a very gross mechanical type of thing,
Okay.
and it doesn't work at all like anybody thinks. So that's another story. But anyway, threw me off a little bit here in my in my thinking about this.
You can play a signature for specific compound.
Yeah, we can make a signature of the compound, and what happens is the body will react to that informational field as if you had given the person that substance. And so you can go to an acupuncture point and get information from it that you can graph and chart on a machine, and it will tell you whether that organ is in a type of inflammatory process or in a degenerative process, and how much, how long it's been there, whether it's winning the battle or losing the battle. And then you can put the person in an informational field from a substance that you think may solve that problem, and ask the body, and the body will react exactly as if you'd given that substance, so you can select a type of treatment.
When somebody is given a placebo, are they affecting their own informational field?
Absolutely. You talk to placebos work 50% of the time. And it isn't because placebos have a physical effect. They have a mental effect in some instances, and they have an informational effect in
So
some
you should be able to affect your own informational field.
So,
without a placebo.
yes, people ask me when I built these very complex computerized machines that do the diagnosis and selection of treatment, they ask me, what's your goal for this machine? And I said, my goal is when the doctor throws the thing in the Dipsy dumpster and just does it. And that can be done. However, the machine takes away his emotional state and his emotional interference with it, and the patient's emotional state and the patient's emotional characteristics with it. But one of the machines that I want to come out with in the future is one that's a biofeedback device that allows the patient to put himself in an informational or mental state that affects the problem with the body. And it can be done. It's easily be done. And other than gross poisoning or gross overconsumption of something, such, for example, it's very beneficial to have vitamin A. We don't get enough vitamin A in our bodies, but you take too much vitamin A and you'll find yourself gaining water and getting ascites, and some people die from it. And many people almost die from it. So too much of a good thing is too much, no matter how good the thing is.
A lot of people are going to want to know, is anybody using this technology? Is there any doctors out there
There
using it?
are, right now in the United States that I know of, 18,000 clinics.
18,000.
18,000 clinics using this technology. I taught 7 companies how to make it. About 5 other companies came in and stole the information from them, which if they'd come and asked me, I'd have handed it to them.
Huh.
Because I knew it was going to need 20 or 25 years out there before it got itself established. And so what I did was I let other people do it, and I ran around in front of them like the man that runs in front of a curling iron and sweeping a pathway for it. I went around in front of them sweeping a pathway in front of the FDA, and we got a very, very good publicity man whose mother had been given, I don't know, 8 or 10 weeks to live, and we kept her alive for another 17 years.
Oh my gosh.
And he felt very happy about that, and so he jumped on our bandwagon. And out of that, it finally ended up, and about 10 or 12 years later, there's actually an alternative medical branch of the FDA, and that branch handles things like we have. And in the meantime, I spent a lot of money and a lot of time and effort and got this device actually approved by the FDA.
So that was my next question. There must be publications, there must be documentation out there.
Well, the only documentation I know is when you put my name into a computer, it'll come up and tell what a fraud this device is and how it's a quack device. But if you find out who put that in there, you'll find out that he says the same thing about a lot of other things that work. And then if you go and watch the man, you'll find that the checks that he cashes at the bank are from large pharmaceutical companies and from the government at times.
Right.
So what name are they going to put into the computer for that device?
I'm not going to say that. I'm not interested in thousands of people associating that and being able to show their friends that I'm a fraud. Anybody who wants to know if it's a fraud, come to me. I'll give you the closest doctor. You can go there and ask the doctor whether his 3, 5, 7, 10,000 patients that went there and 2 days later walked out without their problem think that it's a fraud. Now, I know it's not 100% placebo, because placebos only work 50% of the time. And even though the medical people, the AMA says, their doctors only get 5% of their clinical diagnoses correct, if they only get, 5% or 6% now this year of their clinical diagnoses correct, what do you think they get correct of the treatment? You know why they say practicing medicine. Or on the other hand, watch the TV show House, and each incidence is they try 5 or 6 or 7 treatments, almost killing the patient each time, and then find out what the solution is. He's supposed to be the best diagnostician in the world, on television. But it's very true to life. It comes out of Canada. They're a lot more frank there. And you get the picture of practicing medicine. They don't have an idea. They don't have a way to have an idea. And so I'm now ready, after 28 years of having this device out there, and about somewhere between, probably 1.2 to 4 million or maybe more patient visits behind it, all computerized. In the medical terminology, it's anecdotal, because the patient can't tell you if they're well or they don't have the symptom any longer. That's illegal. But I'm now ready to go up against any one of them, because I can prove that my diagnoses with this type of machine are absolutely correct, because when they go look with conventional diagnostic tools and equipment, I'll see the problem as much as 20 years before it manifests itself in the body, where common medical things can test it. How can I prove that? Well, I'll wait 20 years and prove it. That's what we've done. That's why I have 27 years of testing done on it. That's why I have people that came and thought it was a fraud and didn't accept the medication, but I watched them over a period of time and saw them eventually die of what I told them they would die from. So I now have enough evidence. I'm ready to go and do that, except I'm not going to do that, because I don't have any desire to be assassinated. But I have people that have more testicles than I have that are willing to do it. Pardon my 10 years in the Marine Corps.
You said there's a lot of clones of this technology out there. People have stolen it from you, and
They didn't steal it from me. They stole it from other people. I gave it away, so they couldn't steal it from me. If they'd come to me, I'd have given it to them.
Is it variable in terms of how well they work?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The first thing I did was, in my instrument, when you touch the body, in the beginning, the person doesn't know where the points are. So I put a point locator, and the point locator made a tone, which almost everybody likened it to the sound of a cow that was dying. Okay? So when I gave the people how to build this thing, they build it, and everybody says, oh, that sounds like a cow dying, so they changed the tone. They eliminated 80% of the effectiveness of the machine, because the tone carried a lot of information that if the doctor had only persisted with it for a month, he could then hear that tone, and he could cut diagnosis time down from 35 to 40 minutes to 2.5 to 3 minutes.
Wow.
It just became natural. Oh, I know what that means. I know what that tone means. Let me try this. Let me try that. Then he can dial up on the machine now some 850,000 different substances that are in this world. All the medications of every medical system known. All the herbals of every herbal system known. All the magic healing potions of every magic healing potion system known. All the chemicals that are out there that are man-made. All the chemicals that you find in nature. All the vitamins, all the minerals, all the pharmaceuticals in the homeopathic pharmacopoeia and in the allopathic pharmacopoeia. Everything's there. So you can go to the machine, will help you sort those out and find out exactly what will alleviate the problem. And many times you'll find something that will alleviate a problem in the for example, the small intestine, but find that it'll aggravate the neural system. So you say, oh, well, there must be another medication that'll work and not counteract something here. So you can go back and find that particular medication. Now you know what to give. Now you can ask it, okay, if I'm going to give this, how much should I give? It'll tell you an exact amount. And like everything in nature, there's a bell curve produced, a curve that looks like a bell, and you want that medication that's right at the peak of the bell curve. You want just that amount that'll produce that reaction. And bang, you give it. And many times when we give the medications to a patient, they'll bounce up and down like they were at Disneyland on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And all of a sudden they go, oh, oh, I've had that pain for 20 years and now it's gone. Did we heal them? No. Did we cure them? No. Why do I say no? Because it's against the law. Did they believe they were healed? Yes. Did they believe they were cured? Yes. What makes the difference?
One thing that I think is really important is if this video is out there online, there's going to be a lot of people that want to claim that they have this technology to profit from it.
Oh, absolutely.
And it may not be the one that you're actually talking about.
Absolutely.
How do we prevent against that? Can you? Is there
don't know
is
that
there
you
a
do
search
prevent
term we
against
can
it.
give people on Google or doctors that actually are using the right one? Or
Well, the problem is that the first about 6,000 doctors I trained, and they had machines that mooed like a cow, and it was really good, and after that it went downhill. So again, I'm building a laboratory and a factory where I will produce these, and instead of having to do like you have to do today, to pay between $12,000 and $50,000 for one of the machines, I've got one that's built in a fountain pen, and we'll probably sell it for around $99.
wow.
But there are similar heating modalities in existence, which is
there are some that work beautifully.
radionics.
But yeah, there are radionics machines that...
I'm not saying it's the same, I'm just saying that it's something that works.
Yeah, works
in
very
the
well.
informational-
Oh, works very well, and it works with the... yes, exactly right. It works through the informational field.
Have you heard of the Skanar, the Russian Skanar?
I've definitely heard of the Skanar, having spent about 8 months with the people doing it. And,
Really?
And working together with them. There's another machine for pain. It's called the Acuscope, which was brought to this country by Tony Nabrensky, who was the KGB man in this country looking for medical technology to send home to Russia.
There's a guy named Dr. Hartmut Mueller who built this LED thing that you put
Yeah.
on your skin. Is that another one that you think works?
No,
It doesn't work.
no, I didn't say that.
Oh,
I said there are things that work a lot better. That's what I meant to say.
okay. But people can also, as you said, massage these points on their hand.
Best medical machine ever invented were these two little things we call Acucombs that you just rub your points with and get well.
Is there a way people could build those on their own?
They probably could as soon as they saw one, but it's easier and cheaper to buy one from me because I've paid thousands of dollars for the tooling, and they stamp them out like
Great.
shells coming out of a machine gun, and we put them in a tumbler and tumble them, and they actually have a electric material that we invented to actually do the charging. And it's interesting in that you can take one of the units and do it. And by the way, you can find out how you'll react to any food. One of the best things is that anything that goes into the body, you say, how do my organs react to that? There's a reason that the highest paid doctor is the anesthesiologist. It's because he has to pay the most insurance. And I think, I may be wrong, you'd have to check what it is these days, but when I was working on it, 2 out of every 100 people were killed by the anesthetic. This thing will tell you exactly, because this finger and the distal side of the middle finger tells you about food absorption here and allergy here. And it will tell you whether you have an allergic dispensation toward that medicine. It'll tell you that anesthetic. It'll tell you how your body will react to it.
How does it tell you?
By making an indication.
What?
There's an indication on a meter and on a chart. And when you learn how to read the meter and learn how to read the chart, which can be taught in approximately 1 minute, you can tell whether you're going to have an allergic reaction or not. Another thing we found was out of an major university's animal husbandry department, we found that there are 33 substances that all humans and all animals are allergic to. Most of them are phenolic compounds, have a 6-sided benzene ring in the molecule, and a couple are hormones and a couple are proteins. And we found out that we can measure here and we can find out exactly, if you have allergies, exactly what you're allergic to, and then we can take that material and prepare it homeopathically and give you a couple drops under the tongue, and that allergy will disappear entirely. And then after a period of time, it may come back, and we'll find that you need a homeopathic remedy of a different, what they call potency or strength. And then you take that, and sometimes it takes you 3 or 4 days to chase this thing around and find out exactly what you need, but eventually you'll get to an end point and you won't have that allergy. And as far as I know, and we've tested people now for 28 years, nobody's ever had an allergy come back.
Wow.
And we're dealing strictly with an informational system here that modern science refuses to do, but it doesn't seem to make much difference to those people who had allergies and don't, that modern science doesn't like it. It doesn't fit their paradigm, which is wrong.
I just want to say on camera here that what we are very clear about, having spent quite some time talking with you, that you're not trying to get rich through any of this. You want to make this technology available.
I have no need to make any money. The only reason I want to build the things is so they're built right and they move like a cow. Dying cow. Because that lets the doctor do the treatment for much less, or the diagnoses for much less money. And remember, the doctor only uses us to help him in making his diagnoses. Diagnoses can't be made by a machine, only made by a doctor.
Yeah.
And that's why in the beginning we only sold them to card-carrying AMA, card-carrying MDs. Then we sold a few to chiropractors. We sold a few of them to osteopaths, a few of them to naturopaths. And then the first person to have one that was a veterinarian was the veterinary commissioner for the state of Nevada. And she started using them. And then we have now, I quit keeping track when I started trying to keep in front of these people and keep them out of trouble for using them. And we've not had any trouble in using them because we kept them out of trouble. And anyway, at the time, this was maybe 18 years ago, there were about 350 veterinarians using them. And they were working perfectly. They could find out what problems animals had and how to solve the problem.
Okay. Folks, we're coming to the end of our third hour, and there may be a number of other topics which we want to touch on before, well, while we have the opportunity. In fact, I know there are a number of other topics. I've had my share of the cherry. David, is there more things you'd like to pick up on? I know that Kerry's got some questions too.
Yeah, I'm just sensitive to all the emails that are going to be coming in. People are going to want to know how to buy these little plates. So if you say you can machine them, once you're ready to do that, can you give us information?
If I had orders, I could probably ship within 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I can't tell you what they cost. I know that one of the plates, out of necessity, needs to be copper. And I know that one of the plates, the factory that used to make my electret material, has gone out of business. So either I'll have to make it or find a factory that does it. But we have tooling that fits in a machine called the Yamada punch press that punches it out faster than you can even see, and then it just has to be tumbled in the right combination of things to make it smooth and easy to handle so it doesn't have sharp edges on it.
But it's not that expensive is the bottom line.
It's not really that expensive. The copper in it now costs about $7 or $8 for the copper plate, and probably much the same for the electret plate. And then we have to stamp it and process it. It comes in normally in a little carrying case with a separation between the two.
Okay.
And a little set of cards that you can fold out that shows all the points on the hand, all the points on the feet. So they're pressure points, whether things that you deal with indigestion and headaches and that kind of thing.
Well, you have your first order right now.
Yeah. I've taken them to, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred health fairs and Psychotronic Association meetings and Global Science Congress and Tesla Society meetings and dowsing meetings and so forth, and I've never taken them I started with taking 20, and then I take 50, and then I take 100, and I've never found a time that I didn't sell out before noon
Right.
on the first day. And and once I sell 3 or 4, then people can't put it down. So they're standing there doing it. People go, where'd you get that? What does that do? And the guy, here, let me try it. No, I don't have a shoelace. So then I started giving a shoelace with them so they get them back. So anyway, people like the way it makes them feel. It likes the way they make their hands feel. And they determine by themselves, without any help from the government, that they actually do something for them that they like, and so they buy them.
Well, yeah, I think it's really important to note that the healing is within. We all have this power to heal ourselves.
Like I said, in any medical device that I've ever done, and I've also, by having the machine as a biofeedback tool, I found a number of substances that do miraculous things for the body. And
Such as?
out of all those substances and all the machines, the best thing I ever did was the plates, and they're not expensive. And what I tell people is, if you think about this right, you can just throw the plates away. Which brings up another device that I'll be putting out that looks like a cigarette pack. Well, that's a bad thing to use. Like a pack of playing cards, maybe that's even bad to use. But it's a little device that has a headband that you have a little electrode you soak with salt water in the front and the rear. And it measures...
Salt water?
Salt water, just regular salt water, table salt. And you put that on and it makes a tone. And we give a little cassette tape that makes a tone. And you can learn to, with your brain, you can learn to match. It's like if I hum or whistle Yankee Doodle 10 times, you can hum Yankee Doodle. And if I do Mary Had a Little Lamb, you can do Mary Had a Little Lamb. This makes a sound, and you learn to generate that sound by holding your tongue right. By seeing a watchmaker work.
The position of your tongue changes the tone?
No, that's what I didn't want to say.
Oh.
If you watch someone that's doing precision work, like an engraver or a watchmaker, they do it this way.
Okay.
Yes, they have to hold their tongue in a certain way, and it lets them do things, but you don't necessarily have to hold your tongue right. You learn how to hold your mind right. And
so this gives off an even pitch, but the pitch is varying?
No, it's not an even pitch. It's a varying pitch. It sounds like whistling a tune.
Okay.
And so you learn to make that tune by thinking right, and you'll eventually, you put it on, and if you do different things mentally, you'll get different tones. So you learn to hold those tones so you get the tone that was on the little tape. And when you get to that point, you can then alter these things without the plates. You can just do it mentally.
This is going to make me sound stupid, but people in the audience are going to compare that to the Monroe tapes with the binaural synchronization in the ears. Is there any relationship with those?
None whatsoever.
I didn't think so. Is this like an EKG, like it's a brainwave?
No.
Okay. What's making the tone?
A electrical field that's generated by the body.
So why these 2 points then?
Because those are the ones that work.
Okay. So is it only used for healing, or are there other...
You can do my favorite thing to do with it is find somebody that's into to brainwave analysis and brainwave work, and go have them implement me and then play Yankee Doodle for them with my brain. They immediately say, oops, the machine is broken, we've got to fix it, because nobody can learn to do that. Sorry, I teach anybody to play Yankee Doodle with their brain in 2 weeks.
But I mean, are there...
And then once you learn to do Yankee Doodle, you can do Mary Had a Little Lamb in about 10 minutes.
Let's say you have a guy that can move things with his mind. He has telekinesis, and he makes a song on this thing.
He makes a song, and you buy the song from him, like buying an MP3 thing, and you make that song, chances are very good you're going to run that little ball bearing around through the maze with your head.
Really?
Yep.
That's very interesting.
And I can tell you that government agencies have bought those by the thousands.
So
How would you get an electrode on the back of your head? Isn't that going to go through your hair?
Well, surplus-wise, I bought about 10,000 little fold-out razors that are used to scrape hair off the body when the surgeon needs to sew it up. You just put a little shaving cream on it and scrape a little piece off.
And there's a headband you wear?
There's a headband you wear, and there's two little electrodes made out of a special metal, and they have a little cotton sock over them. And you soak this, you take water and you put it in a little bowl and you stir water and salt together until no more salt will dissolve, and you dip those in there and squeeze them out a little bit and put them, and use a little washcloth with some soap on it and wipe the grease off the area here and the grease off the area back here that you've balded, and put it on, and it works just fine.
Wow. How precise do you have to be in placement? Does it have to be right smack on?
No, within a couple inches. No, it doesn't go on the third eye. That's a lot of your people will ask that. It goes in a different spot.
Okay.
But it's very easy to tell where it goes because you put it on and it isn't making we'll call it brainwave noise. That's not what it is. But then anything that isn't hooked directly to the brain isn't brainwave noise anyway.
I have a 60-second question before this tape goes out. Why would the agencies be interested in stuff like this?
Oh, I don't know that I can say that.
Okay, we'll leave it to our imagination.
Leave it to your imagination.
Okay.
I can tell you that there were a lot of them bought at SRI, and a lot of them were bought by,
To teach remote influencing.
I didn't say that. I didn't even hint that.
I said
And
that.
I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Oh.
Not unless you'd like a visit. You will have a visit if you mention it.
Okay.
And you won't like it. Been involved with trying to build flying saucers. You usually found that flying saucers, if you look at most of the movies, there's always seems to be a robot involved with it. I look at Earth and I look at the things we've done to destroy this fragile little spaceship that we live on, going through the space. And we've destroyed, we talk about burning, we talk badly about all the burning of the rainforests in Brazil. And yet most of the oxygen is produced by plankton. And our use of nickel-cadmium batteries and lead batteries and putting them out into the environment has killed a good part of the plankton. Cetaceans are beaching themselves to make so that there's enough food left for the others.
So, Pete, we are very, very happy to be able to connect with you, and you have been very generous with your time, with your energy, and I hope I have a little more energy left because I'm coming after Bill and after David, and I just have a few wrap-up questions that I want to run by you, and we'll see how this goes. So, one of the leading things you said was that you were involved with robots.
That's correct.
And I'm just wondering if we could kind of drill down there a little bit and talk about what your background was and how involved you really were with robots.
Well, having been involved with trying to build flying saucers, you usually found the flying saucers, if you look at most of the movies, there's always seems to be a robot involved with it. And so I was very interested in robots, and in the early days when I built a satellite tracking station before there were satellites, and then tracked the Russian Sputnik when it was launched and called the government and told them the launch trajectory and the orbital and the frequency it was transmitting on. During the McCarthy era, they thought maybe I was a communist pinko, and so they came and found out that actually had a satellite tracking station before there were satellites. I was about 17 years old at the time. So that got a lot of notoriety here in Idaho, and at that point in time in Idaho, on the eastern side of the state, there was a place that was called the Atomic Energy Commission, a nuclear reactor test site, and it's where the first nuclear power generation was done. And anyway, they anticipated having some nuclear problems there, and decided they need some robotic type thing that could waltz into a nuclear meltdown and pull the reactor apart so that they wouldn't have a China syndrome taking place. So anyhow, eventually I and a few of my friends got the contract to do robots that could do that. And I naturally had great faith in myself and said, oh, sure. And I found out a lot of things. That was a tremendous education. I found out that materials that were electrical conductors inside of a heavy nuclear flux became insulators, and insulators became conductors, and
Really?
very stiff metals became like toast and very brittle and broke apart, or like ashes. And materials like ashes became very hard. The grease became like welds, and so eventually we built a couple of different types of, I won't call them robots because they were truly manipulators. They were devices that at one end looked exactly like we think of a robot looking. It had a pair of arms that would move and grip, and actually we designed them so if you could grip a beaker of liquid, you could move it very rapidly and it would tilt it accordingly and not spill it. And you could reach around behind you or in front of you or out to the side. And then on the bottom of it we had some that had 3 rolling wheels and some had little tank treads. So this was in the 1955, 6, 7, 8 region of time.
At that point, did they have AI?
No, they didn't even the term hadn't even been invented yet. And so anyway, on the other end of this device that looked at one end like a robot was a thing that a person got into. They had a couple of little small 1-inch television tubes with lenses on, and they'd put those on, they could see stereoscopically. And then they had a couple of little hands that they could move their arms and hands like it, and the robot would move accordingly, or the manipulator would move accordingly.
And there could be a distance, right?
There
They would
could be
back in-
any distance up to 20 or 30 miles, but it required wires at the time. And later we made some that were worked on radio waves, but for working with atomic materials, radio waves could be interfered with, a number of things. They couldn't withstand that type of lack of physical security, so all of them that we did for them had wires.
So let's fast forward to a lot more recently, or at least, maybe not even recently. I don't know when it is you got really involved in AI and you started to
Well,
build
first I got involved in computers, and in 1975, 76, we built a computer that was used in Tokyo at the airport to announce the plane flights in a number of different languages. It was the first use I know of a microprocessor chip in a real product. And then later we built a computer training device to teach people how to use microprocessors and how to use software to accomplish various tasks, and we built that at a little computer company whose name was Cyberdyne. And one of the people who worked for us later worked on Terminator, whatever it was.
Well, that was my next question. So I'm not sure how you want to answer this, but the movie Terminator is not so far off base, am I right?
No, it's not so far off base at all. Once we got those working, and it's interesting to note that the computer chip we used in the 1970s, there are more of those produced monthly than all the Intel chips produced in a year, even today, because it's a chip that was actually designed like a computer, whereas the Intel chips are not designed like computers. And the Intel is paying a lot of royalties to various people who worked on various chips that evolved over the proper evolution of computer chips, what I consider to be proper. We now have a chip that's very, very tiny, and has a number of computers built into it that automatically look at the task and adapt themselves. So you may have 10, 20, 30 computer chips working on 30 processes all at once.
In the body of one robot
In the body of one little tiny 1/10 of an inch square chip
that's operating a robot.
that's operating a robot. But once we figured out the right language to use and the right computer design to use, I then got involved with a number of people working on building an artificial intelligence chip that we'll call it was basically the call on it was a fuzzy logic chip. It turns out the only logic that's not fuzzy is fuzzy logic. And it's a chip that can look at a number of different inputs and from those make a decision that's correct. So you can be with a robot, you can be looking at bumps on the floor, you can be looking at a doorway as compared to a wall, you can look at somebody standing between you and the door, you can look at the width of the door and the height of the door and decide whether it can go through it or not. It can go over there, manipulate around the person, go through it, not trip over the cat on the floor, you know, et cetera, and all using fuzzy logic. And then we, because a chip was doing digital computing, a fuzzy logic chip either does digitally, if it's high speed enough, it does analog computing. It looks at things as we see them in the real world. The floor can be looked at digitally like it had millions and millions of little tiny bumps or larger bumps, or it can be looked at analog wise because it can sense the roll of the floor and move the wheels and so forth so it doesn't tip over.
But weren't the Japanese really advanced in the terms of in terms of robotics?
Well, I can tell you that when I went to the Idaho National Engineering Labs, which is what the Atomic Energy Commission became, which is one of the nation's largest research centers. It's in eastern Idaho. I think there are 2,200 PhDs that work there. The whole town is built around, in fact several towns are built around that center, and much goes on there. When we went there visiting with supercapacitors that I brought out of the Ukraine, I got talking to some people who found out I was the one who built the manipulators, and they said they had a large contingency of Japanese robotics experts. This was in about 1987, 88, somewhere in there. They had a large Japanese conference over trying to sell them manipulators and robots, and when they saw my robots they said, "My God, we don't have anything like this. Where in the world did these come from?" They said, "Hell, we've had it for 50 years." So turns out it was only about 43 years at that time. But
So basically you were working in black projects, weren't you?
well, one could say that.
And I just have a curious question, and we haven't gone over this ahead of time, so I don't know if you can even talk to this, but it's not diabolical or anything, but I'm curious because I used to love robots and sort of went on the net and sort of studied and was interested in how far they progressed with all of that. And one of the biggest problems they used to have was whether when they wanted them to walk upright like humans, that they would fall over. And how did you solve that?
Well, we did it much the same way that Dean Kamen built his two-wheeled scooter. Are you familiar with the
Oh, yeah, what do they call that?
Segway.
The thing?
Segway? The Segway.
Okay. Okay,
And
something else.
it's very simple to do.
Which is?
Well, you simply,
if you could say in
you
short.
have a sensor that senses whether you're upright or not, and if you're not upright, then you use fuzzy logic to put it back right.
Presumably, that's the kind of stuff they put in the F-117 that would have fallen out of the sky. It
Yes,
hadn't
it
had that
would.
kind of, right.
For example, the programming language that we use is called Forth, F-O-R-T-H. It should have been called F-O-U-R-T-H because it was the fourth major programming language, but in those days computers wouldn't take 5 characters. Or 6 characters, so they had F-O-R-T-H.
Okay, so this kind of segues into mind control, because I also know that you worked with SRI and you worked with Hal Pudov, right? And I understand you probably knew, you know, Ingo Swann and a lot of the people involved in remote viewing. So what I was wondering, I think you were involved in MK Ultra, and you can probably talk about that because it's been declassified.
You can think about
right?
that all you want to think about it, and who knows whether it's true. I don't know whether that's true.
All right, well,
I know that I worked in a lot of very interesting areas.
but you know that MK Ultra is declassified.
I don't know anything about MK Ultra.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard about it and heard about it and heard about it. I don't know anything about it. I know some things that came out of it, and I know that I researched some of those things, and I built things that I thought were better and turned them over to the government. But other than that, I really don't know that. I actually don't know that much about it.
Okay. And is it true that you're still on call for the government?
Well, I'm doing things all the time that I get calls on
Okay.
for a number of different governments, actually. I'm actually a member of the Astronautics Association for Mankind, which is the Russian equivalent to NASA. I'm on the board of directors.
So why aren't you on the board of directors for NASA if you're on the Russian
Well,
board?
mainly because I have no desire to be with a bunch of clowns.
Okay.
If I wanted to be with clowns, I'd join a circus.
So you're really aware of the secret space program in essence, and you know that NASA is something of a front for almost distraction?
I haven't been associated with them for years, so I have no idea what they're doing.
Okay, but you said NASA's a bunch of clowns. Why are you saying that?
Well, because all I have to do is look at the products they have.
And why are they still, I mean, I know they're going to retire the space shuttle any day, but it's basically, you know, a tin can going up in space. Why are they even dealing with that kind of technology at this point? Do you know?
Because they have it and it works. They've had about maybe, it depends on how you look at reality. They have what I consider to be about 10% of the budget that they really ought to have for the, if you look at the things that came out of the space program through NASA, probably 50 to 60% of the technology we use today throughout all industries came out of NASA. The metallurgy technology and alloys, the temperature resistant plastics and metals, large-scale integrated circuits, you know, basically even the whole transistor technology. I worked in things like that. My cousin and I did quite a number of spy satellites. We did the sampling arm that went on the Viking lander to Mars, which, by the way, was run by a fourth programmed computer. So I worked in and around that area. I worked with North American Rockwell,
JPL?
JPL, a number of different places, and got to see the things that came out of there. I got to see brand new things that were 20 years ahead of anybody on Earth actually applied, and things that were made from them, and they were sent into space, and they recorded things from space. The camera that you're shooting me on, the image sensor in there was made for, basically was made for use in outer space, and that's where they came from. And so if you look at return on investment, there isn't a corporation ever in the history of mankind that returned so much on the investment, even 10%, that the return on investment that came out of NASA. It literally transformed our lives into a whole new century. Take that, which is the only success story that I think man really has, and totally malfunded it. Now, part of the reason is that they wouldn't pay the appropriate amount of money to get the brain power that they needed. People early on worked for NASA not because they got paid good money, but because they got to accomplish their dream. When finally Congress snuffled their dream, they quit working for NASA. So now you had clowns working for NASA. It should have been a circus.
Okay,
Not that there weren't great people there, and not that there aren't great people there, but they're totally frustrated, I'm sure.
right. But there's also a lot of black projects going on under
I
the
don't know
level.
that they're going on at NASA.
Really?
They may be, I don't know.
And what about your familiarity with things like superluminal travel?
My familiarity. Well, no, I don't know anything
Well, we have,
about superliminal
we have
travel.
testimony from Henry Deacon and from Jake Simpson, a couple of what we call whistleblowers, which in essence is what you are at this point in your career, in a way.
Well, in a way.
Okay, you're treading a fine line.
Treading a fine line.
And they are testifying that we have superluminal travel, that we have craft that goes outside the solar system. Can you say anything about that?
I know nothing about it.
Okay. You told us, or at least you talked to me at one point about being a spy master. Is that really true?
I don't know a thing about that.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're kind of striking out here. Where do you think that we can go with
I've
all
told
of
you
this?
the things that I'm willing to talk about. Now you're trying to get me to talk about them. And,
all right. What do you know about a UFO detector?
I was asked to build a UFO detector when I was about 14. And eventually built one.
Okay. And it's operational?
I have no idea when it's operational. Best I know, they smashed it immediately.
Who's they?
The government.
Any
Actually, the
particular
President of the United States at that time.
Really? Okay.
Now, here's a problem with it. I'd love to do something with it. It's a very simple, inexpensive technology.
Is it based on Wilhelm Reich's
No, it
technology?
has nothing to do with Wilhelm Reich. It's based on science, and the problem with it is that it works in such a manner that it will detect virtually every single type of thing in the universe. So what that means is that it would be the best anti-collision device that ever went on board an airplane, because it could see every other airplane in the sky. That's the good news.
Okay.
The bad news is it can see any stealth plane just as easily as it can see a damn dirigible.
So that's why they destroyed it?
I have no idea why they destroyed it.
Well, can we surmise that that's why they destroyed
I
it?
have no idea. I don't know that it was destroyed. I'm just telling you that's my feeling,
Well,
because
you
I've
told
never
me they took it.
I've never seen one.
Well, I thought you would.
Yeah, they took it. So what did they do with it? I don't know if they put it in their pocket or put it in the remnants of the Smithsonian. I don't know what happened to it, but I've never seen one out there in operation. I could tell if there were one in operation
How could you tell?
because of how it works.
Well, I mean,
I'm not about to tell the secrets of it.
I understand that, but
I can't talk about it without
you would know
telling the
if
secret of
somebody
it.
else was operating.
I'd
your
know if anybody was
device?
operating one of them.
How would you know that?
I would
unless you're
know that because of
operating
how it works.
them? Okay, would you remote view them, or would you be?
No, not at all.
You have a tracking device on your invention.
It emits something that is absolutely unique to the device.
Oh wow. Okay.
There's another kind of detector which was destroyed upon presidential order, I understand.
Yes, there
Are you
was
able to talk about that? Because that's fantastic.
probably not. It's probably
Okay.
not healthy for you guys to talk about it.
In
Okay,
that
well,
case-
I understand that you, and I don't know if you can talk about this, but my understanding is that with robots, with any kind of device that you're operating using AI or any other kind of, as you say, manipulator, whatever, that there's a sort of has to be a fail-safe or a command override such that, you call it a gatekeeper, I believe, but
No, that's a gatekeeper's a product that allows that to take place.
or not to take place.
Or not to take place. And yes, there's obviously it's like with atomic bombs and hydrogen bombs, nuclear devices, and cruise missiles and whatever. One thing you don't want is your enemy to get a hold of it and use it against you. So there must needs be some methodology to handle that.
Are you able to say that you had a hand in creating some gatekeepers?
Well, I created gatekeepers, and whether they use it there or not, I don't have any idea. I just know they buy a lot of gatekeepers or bought a lot of gatekeepers. And I know that right now we're in the process of negotiating a very large order for gatekeepers. what I call gatekeepers, and what they're going to use them for, I really can't mention.
Would you call yourself sort of, I mean, an inventor? I mean, how would you?
I have always billed myself as an instrument maker.
Okay.
I build instruments that see things or hear things or measure things that heretofore nobody else builds. Anybody else builds something, I don't ever replicate it. I don't reinvent anybody's wheels. I invent my own wheels.
Okay, I want to kind of go into a different area that we haven't really addressed at the moment. And I want to know if, you know, because obviously I realize there's a lot you're not talking about, and there's some stuff that we've got off the record and all of this kind of thing. But do you feel that you're protected?
Yes.
Do you feel you're protected on an earthly level or on other levels as well?
Definitely an earthly level. I have no idea about other levels. However, when you say feel as compared to know, then I will tell you that I've had a charmed life.
Okay.
I can remember one time in Vietnam standing in a firefight and remember that basically only machine guns fire tracer bullets. And every fifth round in our machine guns at least is a tracer. So the machine gunner can aim his weapon because they're jiggling and bouncing so much you can't really use a sight well. So you want to see where the bullets are going and place them where you want them. So every fifth bullet goes out and you see a little red glow where the bullet's going. And I was in firefights where the tracers were so thick it was like you're in the middle of a 30-foot campfire that was down to the ashes with a weed eater whipping up sparks. And I remember about the third time I looked up and said, "You and me, Big Al, all the way," because I knew I was being kept alive. There was no reason for me to be alive. 50% of the Marine, the Marine officers I went to Vietnam with were killed while they were there. They were there for 13 months. I was there for, I don't know, 23 or 4 months. But anyway.
And to this day, you feel that?
Well, I've been in other places that were even scarier than that, and I've done crazy things all my life to invent things fast rather than slow, and take it the hard way instead of the easy way, and so forth, and somehow live through all of it. You know, I get the biggest kick today out of some kids spilled a little tiny bottle of mercury in a town nearby, and they came and dug an Olympic swimming pool in their front yard and hauled all the dirt off and charged them thousands and thousands of dollars to get rid of the mercury. Hell, I used to spill 2 or 3 ounces of mercury a day in my lab, which was down a basement, and the only thing it did probably is drop my IQ by 30 or 40 points. But
that didn't really matter.
I used to go around with a piece of lead solder hanging out of my mouth. I must have spent 20 years with a piece of solder sticking out of the corner of my mouth getting that good lead. And all that did was drop my IQ another 10 or 20 points. So, yeah, I've been charmed.
Okay, have you been threatened?
Oh, yeah, I've been threatened a number of times by just about every kind of person that would want to threaten me.
You can make a joke about Bastard School as well, that's a good one.
Well, that was what I was trying to get to, but
Yeah.
You can talk about Bastard School, that's not classified.
AKA terrorism.
can we talk about Bastard School at all?
Well, yeah.
Okay, and what was your experience with that?
Well, I call it bastard school. When I was an officer in the military, very obvious, I was trained in military things. And I was taught to be the biggest SOB on the block. And I got so good at it, they finally turned around and had me do some other things because it scared them to death. Because I was a mean green killing machine. And so instead of teaching terroristic things, they had me teach anti-terroristic things. And then they in both cases, one, they were afraid that the enemy would learn what I was doing that was nasty, and then they thought the enemy might learn what I was doing to disrupt being nasty. So then they moved me on to other things.
You've dealt with mind control in some ways, in some fashions, and you know, something about the mind, clearly, and about this information field, and I'm wondering if there's something within the information field and/or the mind-body interaction that can be set up to protect oneself against, let's say, mind control devices such as the digital television that is now projecting, able to communicate with people in their houses and so on and so forth.
Well, that's an assumption that we're making.
Right, I'm making that assumption, not
Yep.
you. But,
And,
so I'm just asking, what, is there something, some
There are
technique?
things that were designed specifically. As an example, in the probably 80s, the Russians had a thing that was, because it sounded like a woodpecker on a shortwave radio, it's called the woodpecker. And they had 3 large locations that were transmitting probably several million watts per location, and they were phased in a particular area so they could move where the peak of that electromagnetic wave would fall. And turns out that one of the places here they had it fall was in a town called Eugene, Oregon. And people there were getting sunburns while they slept at night. And they were getting headaches, and they were having birth defects and so forth. And the woodpecker had a very strong signal there, and a highly interfering signal. And it was at a psychoactive frequency, so that it would disrupt the appropriate thinking capabilities of the brain.
This is all documented, by the way, on the net.
Oh yeah, it's all documented on the net. And there were also, a good friend of mine was a man who discovered that they were bombarding the Moscow embassy with microwaves that had much the same frequency content. So there was a fellow that designed a little device that you could wear under the collar, which was provided to all of our personnel that we needed to make sure had clear thinking, that they could carry with them, and it would send a signal, a close-by signal, remembering that electromagnetic waves decrease with the cube of the distance. After a very short distance, the signal is very, very weak. So you put a weak signal near the person and drive their mind into a range of brainwaves that would be benign or even hopefully beneficial. And they found a very simple way to find out what was beneficial, and then a very simple way to tune the device so that it would put those waves out. And they were carried by all types of diplomats and military personnel for
So we
years
can
and
assume
years
that
and years.
the president and various people are using these devices to this
I
day.
would certainly think they would be. I know it would. I know that I carry one around.
Okay, and you're saying this person who invented it, you're saying you're not the person who
I didn't
invented
say anything about it.
Okay. But there's also a technique involved such that one can do it without the device if one learns?
Yeah, you can learn to hold your mind pretty much in whatever mode you want.
But it has to do with the informational field, is that
No,
right?
it doesn't. It has to do with the electromagnetic field.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So your mind, you use your mind to affect the electromagnetic field?
No, you just use your mind to generate its own electromagnetic field at a benign frequency, or even a helpful
To counter it is what you're saying.
to counteract it.
Well, you know,
I'll give you an example. You get 3 or 4 people that are very close, or 2 people that are even closer, and what you'll get is you'll get heartbeat synchronization, which just occurs, and then you'll get brainwave synchronization, and then unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on the situation, you get hormone production. And hormones are very, very powerful messengers. And then you get into trouble, but or not. But
it's a form of entrainment, right?
it's a form of entrainment, and you get an entrainment. So a very weak signal can give you great entrainment. Nikola Tesla made a device that used compressed air and it was a little weight, and he could stick that on the ground outside of a skyscraper in New York, and this thing would sense ground wave oscillations and tune itself to them. So it'd start out very rapidly and slow down, and then it would find where it was affecting the environment. It would resonate with it. It's like if you have a wine glass here and you play your violin upscale, eventually you'll find where, if you stop real quick, you'll hear the wine glass vibrating. Then if you play that note exactly, pretty soon the wine glass will break, because just a little bit, it's like pushing a swing. If you push a swing in phase, the swing will go way high. If you push it out of phase, it'll stop, it won't go very high, it'll go high and then low, number of things. You want to get it resonant or in phase. So that's what Tesla's device would do, would move a weight up and down, up and down, up and down, using pneumatic pressure and pneumatic valving, and he'd make skyscrapers just wag like a dog's tail in
So
New York.
isn't this the actual, like, sort of the kernel behind mind control, is getting a very slow resonance
No.
set up and then affecting it
No.
one way or another? No?
No. Doesn't have much to do with mind control. But part of what you want to do, perhaps, with mind control is get your mind in a certain frequency. But that's old style mind control. And what you want to do now, basically, if you want to look at neurolinguistic programming, uses the principles of neurolinguistic programming, is much more powerful than getting a brainwave entrainment. Brainwave entrainment will drop the IQ, it'll drop the attention span, it'll drop change the memory. So there are a number of things that can be done there, but what we use now is a thing that changes the way the brain is attached to itself and the way the brain hooks together, and we just change the neural pathways. You can cause a person to forget, you can cause a person to do things that they have no intention of doing. You can make a stimulus that would cause one thing, like a stimulus that would cause me to reach out and grab some water and take a drink because I was thirsty. You can very quickly and easily change that stimulus to, when I get thirsty, I'll reach out and grab a glass of water and pour it down my throat, or my neck. Pour it down the front of my suit.
So what about the idea that you were telling us about the piece of the heart? You could cut off a piece of the heart and it would actually give it to somebody who would recognize, a doctor, who would recognize it as a part of the brain or have resonance.
It would appear to be brain tissue.
And this is like a medical fact, right?
It's a medical fact. And there's a very good book that anyone who has a child that doesn't read this book should be jailed. I'm serious. It's called The Magical Child by Joseph Chilton Pearce, P-E-A-R-C-E. And he has follow-up books on it. For example, The Magical Child Matures tells you why that no center city fatherless child is ever going to amount to anything, ever. They can't, because their brain doesn't form properly.
Really?
Yep.
A fatherless child.
Well, or motherless.
An orphan.
A child that's raised outside of a normal family environment, let's put it that way. That's much more accurate. And it'll tell you why that can't happen, why they can't really become useful to society.
Well, is this the thing you were telling us about the heart, being close to the heart?
Part of it, that's part of it. That's just part of it. There are a number of different factors. But one of the things that Pearce writes about in The Magical Child is, for example, that during the first 16 days or so after the amniotic fluid breaks, the child is exposed to electromagnetic field from the mother's heart beating, and that field is modulated by what's in the brain cells in the heart, which are the emotions, and those emotions are transferred to the child. So they thought, well, that may be true, so they went to Europe, where a lot of women have their children raised by wet nurses who nurse them on their breast, and they find out that the child takes on the emotional content of the wet nurse. Or children who are raised without a father never get the male emotions from the father,
But
as compared to the female emotions.
It happens in the first 16 days. After that, it's not
the
so
greater part of it happens within the first 16 to 18 days.
incredible.
And it turns out, for example, the Russians were did brilliant and massive research on this, found out that if the child is born underwater in a fluid, remember the child's already in a fluid, it isn't going to hurt him to be underwater for a while. The child's born underwater in a fluid about body temperature and moved up with contact with the mother to the breast, where if you look at how you would naturally hold your arms and nurture a child, the heart of the mother and the heart of the child are going to be right next to each other. The child starts picking things up. If the child is kept in that position for the first 12 to 14 hours, the child usually develops speech by 6 months of age and is able to stand on their own at 6 months of age.
Can you talk about that Russian doctor?
I unfortunately, I could if I remember his name. I can't remember his name.
Okay.
He was brought to the United States, and I can tell you that his techniques were used by Madonna in having her children.
But we're talking about generating an IQ of as high as 275 in
Right.
children.
I can tell you that her children are some of the most brilliant children on the face of the earth because of that. I know that she worked for using those techniques for a year to a year and a half before they were conceived, just to become ready. And that could well be privileged information, but it leaked out to me.
So you're
And I
saying
know it to be true.
that the heart has an information field component which somehow entrains the formation of the
No,
nervous
I'm not
system?
saying anything about information field. I'm saying the
Okay.
heart has an electromagnetic component that is there because the heart beats, and it takes a large electrical current to beat the heart.
Okay.
Anything the body is bioelectric. Anything near a magnetic field or an electric field that's conductive then has components that come from the things around it that are electric or magnetic or conductive.
Okay.
So you can see that stuff in the heart field. The information, not information field, the information transfers to the, just like programming a ROM chip, transfers to the heart of the child. And as an example, one of the final proofs of this is there was a man who absolutely hated the odor, the sight, and the taste of mustard, and got a heart transplant, and all of a sudden couldn't get enough mustard. And just by happenstance, the wife of the donor somehow got word to him that her husband loved mustard, and so he had the heart that came along with it. Number of people were in essence SOBs, or were very tense individuals, and they got a heart from a man who was a very calm man, and all of a sudden their wife and their children didn't even know who they were. They were a completely different person. That information was encoded in there, and when the nerves were sewn together and some of them grew back, that information got out of the heart, and it may well be that the magnetic field of the heart transmitted and the brain picked it up. I don't know that, but I know that we instrumented people's hearts and would let them see things that would excite them. The heart rate picks up, adrenaline's produced. Maybe what they see, anger, causes anger or fear. And if you anesthetize that part of the heart, then they have they don't have those fears and those angers and so forth. So that emotional information and some things like preferences in flavor or color, or transferred and transmitted in there. So it's very important to get the child up into a nurturing position. Children who were nurtured by both mother and father have both male and female components. Children nurtured by one or the other have only the one component of their emotional makeup.
And it's the first 16 days that does it.
Well,
Is that right?
read the book. The greater part of it occurs in the first 16 to 18 days. And yes, maybe that's 30%. Maybe another 10% occurs in the next 50 days. Maybe another 10% in the next 180 days.
Okay, but very early on. Is
Very early
basically
on, you
the
want to get
essence
that
of it.
in there very early on.
Okay,
Well,
I want to go in
but
another
wait a minute.
direction.
Is there any other tissue in the body besides the heart that acts like neurological tissue?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Now you can, if you want, you can call, the pineal part of the brain, even though it doesn't do brain function.
Uh-huh.
It's part of the brain. The pineal and pituitary are mostly melanin, a substance called melanin. Melanin, a type of melanin, makes the skin pigment, but they're a slightly different kind of melanin. And I've, in my research, have found that the melanin in the pineal, which in Eastern medicine is the third eye, the seat of the third eye, is very, very, very good at picking up informational signals and adding a time content to them, thus subtracting a non-time content. And so it's always been attributed to clairvoyance and clairaudience and so forth. Those are signals that are taken out of a signal that appears to be everywhere, every when. It coheres that for the person, and they have certain abilities that they wouldn't have. The Tibetans drill a hole in the front of the forehead with a little rock drill, and then they poke a bamboo skewer in and manipulate the pineal to quote-unquote open the third eye. And what it does is it gives it a hole through the Faraday cage, speaking in science terms, and it makes a sensitivity by making a piece of scar tissue that opens up or opens the third eye or opens clairvoyance or clairaudience or remote viewing or remote influencing or a number of different things.
Isn't it true that fluoride deadens or hardens the pineal gland?
Absolutely.
And
But what it
since we have
mostly
fluoride
hardens-
in our water,
Well-
isn't there a sort of a, basically you could look at that as an Illuminati plot to deaden the intelligence and the psychic ability of the
What
population?
I try to do as a scientist to state as scientific things, I don't presume about what the Illuminati want to do,
Okay.
but I can tell you that the main thing that halides, which are chlorine, fluorine, bromine, mainly what they do in the body is congeal cholesterol into arterial plaque.
So
I mean, that's well known.
Slows down the blood
I have,
through the arteries.
yes, it'll do, yeah, it closes down the arteries. So there are many ways to sterilize water other than chlorine and fluorine. There are many ways, for example, we say, well, we use chlorine for tooth decay. You have a whole fleet of boats up and down the west coast of the United States and the east coast of the United States that can't fish anymore because we've killed all the fish, except there are bottom feeders called, I won't tell you the name of the fish, but there are bottom feeders. That is a fish that consists of 60% of the weight of the fish is liver, and about 60% of the liver is that particular fish liver oil, which contains a compound called Activator X by Price of the Price Pottinger Foundation of years ago fame. And he found out right after World War II that one drop of that, well, you can take that fish oil, which is highly fishy tasting, get it cold, the waxes and false isomers will solidify, you can filter those out, and the oil left over has very little or no taste to it. And that oil you can put in the sunlight and it won't turn rancid for hundreds of years. It should have been used in place of sperm whale oil for lubricating watches, but they didn't use it for that. And,
So is it this cod liver oil?
no, it's not cod liver oil. It's a different oil, but those boats could go out and bring back boatloads of this fish. It grows from Antarctica to Arctica and everywhere in between.
What does that have to do with fluoride in the water?
What it has to do with is that oil, one drop put in a slice of bread eaten daily, and you have no caries whatsoever. There's no tooth decay. It eliminates tooth decay.
So,
And they did this on
likewise,
thousands and hundreds of thousands of children in Europe after World War II.
and likewise, it doesn't, you can guard against hardening of the
And
arteries.
then you don't get the hardening of the arteries from the fluoride or the chloride. Now what happened was, and this is, you know, I'll take I'll take the hit for this, let's put it that way. It's my conjecture that the only reason we use chloride in the water was because the politicians have already spent all of the Social Security money. So you've got to have something there so that people die at retirement age. Then because of healthcare getting better, we had to have something else that made it happen even faster, so we put fluoride in the water.
Wow.
Because they could have gotten rid of tooth decay with an absolutely benign substance that we had a whole industry here that could go out and bring us back all we could ever use for the whole world, very inexpensively, and totally non-negatively in the body. But we didn't do that. Now, it's the reason that fish oil doesn't turn rancid is obviously because it's an antioxidant. It's the best antioxidant known to man, as far as I know. Price called it Activator X. It has a definite chemical formula. It could definitely be put out there. But it'd eliminate most of heart surgery. It would eliminate tooth decay. So it's not put out there because that isn't efficient in our system, in our capitalistic system.
When you
Well,
say
you're
price,
talking worldwide though as well, right?
Yeah, it'd be worldwide. I mean, like I say, we did it in Europe after World War II for years.
when
But
you
we
say,
took that Activator X, by the way, was taken, there's a small amount of it in wheat germ oil. So that was taken from wheat germ oil. Now we found I found the ratfish had this stuff in, you know, massive amounts.
when you said price, do you mean Dr. Weston price?
Weston Price, yeah.
Okay.
And it's my conjecture. The only reason I could see that we would be using that is to kill people off. Why else would you do that?
Saying about the pineal gland, because I have a whole long section in my video that everybody's seen, most of this audience has
Right.
seen it, all about the pineal gland. So
Okay.
you're saying that this oil, if taken, would help to decalcify the pineal gland or somehow increase its sensitivity?
If the pineal gland is calcified by halides, yes, it would.
Okay.
But you're not naming the fish other than
I
the
wasn't really naming the fish.
ratfish that you just talked
No,
about.
and that's not the.
Not the main source.
No, that's what it's called in certain areas of the world.
Okay, okay, but I was curious, you said something about, you know, there's camps being built around the United States. Do you know the purpose behind them?
Yes, there are camps to detain people.
And is this something that goes on the tail end? Because I'm looking for the agenda that goes behind the, you know, the crash of the dollar that basically you're saying is coming at some point in the near future, quite possibly, right? That's what
I
your
think
sources
that's a
are
great
telling you?
possibility. I'm
Okay.
planning for it.
Okay. And then on top of it, there are camps being built, and you can verify that?
Well, they're giving tours of some of them, and you go on the internet, and you'll find out that there are a number of locations where people say, well, here's a camp that's built.
Okay, and what about the role of viruses in eliminating the population? Is there any validity to that?
I have no idea. It's not my area of expertise.
Okay.
I have suppositions, and
Well, you clearly are a healer, so have you got advice on how people can protect themselves from viruses?
well, I think all that advice is available if you just download it from the FDA websites or the various websites of, say, FEMA and Homeland Security.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Wear a mask, wash your hands. They're absolutely correct.
Okay.
Another good thing to do is go to some place there's not a lot of people. And we're sitting here filming in an area that there's not a lot of people. The town says entering the town on one side of the sign, and on the same other side of the signpost it says entering the town, and First Street's in some great big city somewhere else, because there's not another street.
Okay, well, so what is it that you think is coming in the future in terms of, let's talk about outer space a little bit. Do you think that there's anything out there that we need to be aware of?
Well, I think there's all kinds of things out there we need to be aware of.
Okay. I mean, is the only threat, in other words, is the
Well,
only
it's a
threat
major
on-
threat that we, right now, don't have any deterrent for.
What threat?
A threat from outside the the planetary bounds.
Well, what about the satellites that have recently been classified such that they won't tell us about incoming bodies? That's all classified suddenly.
Well, that I don't know about. I didn't realize that had been done, but if it's been done, it's obviously been done for some reason. And that reason may be to stop panic. I know the government has a tremendous belief in whatever you do, don't cause panic in the people. Because when you cause panic in the people, then it draws attention to the lawmakers, the Senate, the Congress, and the presidency, and the ruling party. And they're not looking, it's like the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Try to live in times that they're not at all interesting, they're boring as hell, nothing's going to happen. So I think that anything that might happen that would cause people to start thinking about, well, why isn't something being done here? We're out of money. We've been out of money for years. And so we don't have money to go do anything about it. So why let the people worry?
Okay, but you were telling me something about the fact that you think there's really only 10 months left for the the rollout of what could be like reversing the agenda. I don't even know if you believe it's possible to reverse the agenda that's being rolled out at the moment.
Well, I know that we
there's
live.
about 10 months because that the Earth, we've polluted our own mess.
Okay, here are just a few things that you can look up, and the things I talk about are things that are openly available on the internet, Library of Congress, or a lot of things now on YouTube, a lot of things on ask.com and google.com and so forth. You can go in there and start making searches and looking, and you can find a lot of information. There's a tremendous amount of information
About
the things that you just spoke about, and specifically you can find out that, it's about a couple of weeks ago we just had a very near flyby of a huge asteroid that would have caused thousands, if not millions, depending on where it hit, thousands or millions of deaths on the Earth if it had hit the Earth. And it was a near flyby. Now, maybe that nearness was 100,000 miles, but 100,000 miles is sure different than the distance between here and Mars, or here in Pluto. It's came by very close. It could have been one of those things that hit the Earth, and we have nothing to stop something like that.
Okay, you're saying we have nothing to stop something. Is it possible black people in black projects have something to stop that?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. And what about...
If they did, I don't believe they've had the money to build it.
And what about positive aliens? Do you think that they might interfere with something of that
Well, if
nature?
there are such things as positive aliens, I think that, I wonder, I look at Earth and I look at the things we've done to destroy this fragile little spaceship that we live on, going through the space. And we've destroyed, we talk about burning, we talk badly about all the burning of the rainforests in Brazil. And yet most of the oxygen is produced by plankton. And our use of nickel-cadmium batteries and lead batteries and putting them out into the environment has killed a good part of the plankton. Cetaceans are beaching themselves to make so that there's enough food left for the others.
Because they're that wise.
Well, I think that they are, and of course you had to have worked with them in some of the military programs to understand how wise they are.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to wind this up. I would love to talk to you all night and all day, and especially if you were able to come out with some of the more fascinating things that you're involved in. But Project Camelot wants to thank you very much. I want to thank you for your service to humanity. You've clearly been involved in some things that are healing for the population out there. You're here trying to testify to something coming that you firmly believe that people need to be aware of. And so I want to thank you.
I appreciate your interest.
Absolutely.
Anything that can get information out to the people, and my suggestion to the people is, because this stuff is not really hidden, it may be squirreled away somewhere, but it's there and you can go out and find the information for yourself. And my suggestion is you do it. My suggestion is that you prepare yourself for an emergency, because no matter what you do in life, you're going to run into an emergency. And if you prepare yourself for it, then you stand a very good chance of surviving it. And if you don't prepare yourself for it, you stand a very good chance of not surviving it.
Okay, thank you. And Pete Peterson, I really want to thank you again. Bill, you want to say any closing words yourself?
I think this is the most important interview we've ever done.
Okay, and David, you got anything you want to add to that?
Well, Pete, I just want to say I appreciate your courage for inviting us out here.
I think that the data that you've given about the consciousness and the information field is really instrumental in my work, and I hope we can continue that discussion.
Well, I think that we'll probably continue a relationship for a long time. And I'm perfectly willing to share that information. I'm at a point in my life that the only thing I can do now to make my life worthwhile is to share the wisdom that I've obtained as a stone rolling through this interesting experience of life on Earth. Been involved with trying to build flying saucers. You usually found that flying saucers, if you look at most of the movies, there's always seems to be a robot involved with it.